scary stories.
Every night, I share a story that most people wouldn't dare to tell. If you're listening, you're already one of us. And if you haven't subscribed yet, that's okay. But just know, every new subscriber brings me one step closer to building a safe place for the one person I love most, my mother. So if you enjoy these haunted tales, press that button, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be the reason the next story finds a happier ending. The clock on the wall clicked to 11:57 p.m. Sophia lay in bed, eyes wide open, her fingers nervously scrolling through her phone. The glow of the screen was the only light in the room. Her parents were asleep. The wind outside whispered secrets through the trees, and every creak of the old house made her breath catch. Her thumb stopped on a forum post. Has anyone actually used the Hell Correspondence site? They say it only works at midnight. Type in the name of someone you hate, and they're gone. Forever. She'd read this before. Urban legends weren't rare on the forums she frequented, especially on the whisper web, an anonymous part of the internet rumored to be haunted itself. But this one stuck with her, because it kept coming back. Because lately, she was starting to believe it might be real. Rachel Morgan, Sophia's best friend since 3rd grade, had changed. Not all at once, but in fragments. Like paint peeling off a wall, exposing something, rotting underneath. She wore all black now. Not just fashion black, ritual black. Strange sigils drawn in ink on her wrists. Songs in foreign languages whispered under her breath. And most disturbing of all, her obsession with the underground singer, Luna Black. She's more than music, Rachel had told Sophia last week, eyes glowing like she'd found religion. Luna understands the pain. She feeds it. She burns it. Sophia didn't understand. And she didn't like the feeling that someone, was pulling Rachel away. Not just from her, but from the world itself. It wasn't just Rachel. Samantha Bell, a sophomore from their school, had vanished 2 nights ago. No one had seen her after attending Luna's secret concert. Her parents filed a missing persons report, but the police found nothing. Sophia remembered Samantha's wide smile, and how that smile had faded in the weeks before her disappearance, just like Rachel's. And then, Samantha's name appeared on the forum. I used the site. I did it. But now, something's watching me. Sophia reread the post until it disappeared, deleted within minutes. Rachel invited Sophia to a concert. It wasn't public. It wasn't on any listings. Just a GPS pin sent through a message with no text. Abandoned factory. Midnight. No security. No phones allowed. Sophia went anyway. She didn't know why. Maybe to protect Rachel. Maybe to understand. Maybe because part of her believed that if she didn't, something worse would happen. The factory was filled with people, all dressed in black. Candles lined the floor. A stage of rusted iron and red curtains towered in the middle. And then, Luna Black appeared. Her voice wasn't beautiful. It was unnatural, too perfect, too smooth, like it was sliding into their minds. Sophia felt it, the sound inside her skull, the crawling heat of fear. She saw Rachel swaying, eyes rolled back, and the audience chanting in whispers. Burn the name, feed the flame, burn the name, feed the flame. That night, Rachel didn't come home. Sophia waited, called, texted. Nothing. She dreamt of fire, of screaming, of red string tied around her fingers, cutting into her flesh. The next morning, Rachel showed up at school. But she wasn't Rachel anymore. She didn't remember the concert. She didn't even seem to know who Sophia was. Her eyes were hollow, her laugh too slow, like a puppet that had forgotten how to be human. That's when Sophia returned to the forum, and that's when the site appeared. Not a link, not a page. A single line of glowing red text in the chat box. You know her name. Midnight awaits. Sophia sat at her desk, alone. Again. The house was colder than usual. The time, 11:59 p.m. Her cursor hovered over the text box. The website was open. No address bar, no buttons, just a prompt. Type the name of the one you hate. This cannot be undone. Her hands trembled. She typed slowly. Luna Black. Her finger hesitated over the enter key. Her reflection in the screen didn't move, and then it did. The reflection smiled at her. The lights went out. Rachel wasn't herself anymore. Sophia noticed it in the little things. The way Rachel didn't blink as much. The way her smile twitched like it wasn't hers. When they passed each other in the hallway, Rachel didn't even nod. Her eyes flicked over Sophia like she was just air. She used to walk with Sophia. Now she walked behind her. She used to wear bracelets and tie her hair up. Now it flowed wild and unbrushed, and black threads crisscrossed her fingers. Woven symbols, like runes. And her journal. Rachel never went anywhere without her journal. But Sophia found it stuffed into her locker one morning, sticky with dried blood between the pages. Inside, Rachel had scribbled the same phrase over and over. She is watching me. The Raven Queen lives in my skin. Sophia started noticing more students acting strange. A group of boys who once laughed loudly now sat in silence, drawing circles into their desks. Girls in the library humming the same off-key melody. The janitor said he found ash in every toilet bowl in the school. Then, flyers began to appear. Luna Black, the final ascension. One night only. Midnight. The hollow chapel. No address. Just a sigil in the corner. 4 jagged lines in a circle. Sophia saw Rachel clutching one of the flyers like it was scripture. Sophia followed her. The hollow chapel was an old, condemned church on the edge of town. Some said it was haunted. Others said it was just unstable. But that night, its bell rang for the first time in decades. The followers gathered silently. They wore veils. They lit candles that burned with blue flames. And at the altar stood Luna, her arms open, robes flowing like smoke. But something was wrong with her face. It blurred in Sophia's vision, like a smudged painting. One moment beautiful, the next, a hollowed skull. Rachel stepped up to her, holding a black feather. Her voice trembled. "Take me. Let me be your vessel." Luna kissed her on the forehead, and the crowd screamed, not in terror, but in ecstasy. Rachel collapsed. Sophia ran. The next day, Rachel didn't come to school. Sophia found something tied to her bedroom doorknob when she got home. A tiny straw doll with a red thread around its neck. She screamed and dropped it. When she looked again, it was gone. That night, the Hell Correspondence site opened by itself. No typing. No clicking, just glowing red text. She is no longer Rachel. She belongs to the flame. And a new message. The choice remains. Pull the thread, or burn with her. Mirrors began to betray her. Every time Sophia passed one, she saw her reflection blinking a second too late. Sometimes it moved when she didn't. In her dreams, Rachel stood in the middle of a burning field, her face covered by a veil. Luna stood behind her with Eliza Knight, Hellgirl, floating just above the flames. "Choose," Eliza whispered, reaching toward Sophia with pale, cold fingers. "Send her soul, or suffer beside it." Sophia woke up choking on smoke, but her room was clear. The smell of ash stayed in her hair. Sophia tried to talk to her guidance counselor, but as soon as she said Rachel's name, the counselor's nose began to bleed. Her eyes rolled back. She whispered, "She belongs to her now. We all will," then collapsed. The school shut down for 3 days after that. Toxic gas leak, they said. But Sophia knew the truth. She was watching everyone fall under Luna's shadow, and no one even seemed to notice. Everyone except her, and Eliza. That night, Sophia looked out her window and saw Eliza standing under the streetlight, not moving, not blinking, just waiting. Rachel came to Sophia's house the next night, but she didn't knock. She stood at the foot of the bed when Sophia woke up, soaked from the rain, her eyes pitch black. Her voice was hoarse. "I wanted to say goodbye, before she finishes me." Sophia reached for her, but Rachel stepped back, screaming like something was tearing her from the inside. Her skin pulsed. Her veins glowed red. Then she vanished. The window was closed. Sophia returned to the forum, pleaded for help. Only one message replied. A user named Boneash27 wrote, "You can save her, but only if you send Luna first. And even then, you may still lose her." Sophia stared at the straw doll on her desk. The red thread seemed to breathe. Eliza's voice whispered behind her ear, "You cannot unsee what you've seen. You cannot unchoose what you've become." Sophia turned slowly. Eliza was standing in her closet, smiling. Sophia didn't sleep that night. Not after seeing Eliza standing in her closet, her dress soaked in soot and ashes, her eyes glowing like burning embers. But by morning, Eliza was gone, leaving only scorch marks across the wood floor, and a small black envelope resting on her pillow. Inside, a single red string and a slip of paper that read, "Pull when ready, but remember, revenge always collects interest." Sophia locked the string away, but it called to her. It vibrated through her bones. It whispered Rachel's name over and over again. At the local archive, Sophia dug into the strange case of Luna Black. There was no birth certificate, no official records, no legal name. Just a file from 1872, Eliza Knight, a young girl burned alive in a village ritual accused of witchcraft. Her final words, etched by a priest who later gouged his own eyes out. "Those who cast pain into the fire will be consumed by it. I will wait for their cries. I will return when names are offered freely." Luna Black wasn't real. She was a shell for Eliza, an avatar, a lure. Sophia walked through her town and realized something terrifying. Everyone had ash on their hands. Her teachers, the crossing guard, the grocery clerk. It wasn't real ash, but under the right light, it shimmered like soot clinging to their skin. People were making pacts. Not just Rachel. Not just her. This was bigger. The whole town was burning slowly. That night, she received a message on her mirror. "You are almost ready. Just one tug. Pull the string and let her burn." The string sat on her desk, writhing like a worm. Rachel returned, but barely. Her skin was cracking like clay under heat. Her voice echoed with two tones, her own and Luna's. "I remember now," she whispered. "I made the deal first. I asked her to erase my pain. But now, I'm hers. My body's a cage, and she's in the walls of my mind." Sophia wept. Rachel reached out, trembling. "You can't save me, but you can stop her, before she swallows anyone else." Sophia didn't want to believe it, but Luna Black had become a wildfire, and Sophia was holding the match. That night, the red string glowed like lava. When she touched it, the room went dark and cold. Not just chilly, cemetery cold. Sophia blinked, and suddenly, she wasn't home anymore. She stood in a charred landscape of black trees, crimson sky, and ashfall like snow. Eliza stood at the center, floating inches off the ground. Her voice was a whisper inside every bone. "You called me, Sophia. Now I will grant what you ask," Sophia screamed. "I never meant to..." "But you typed the name. You held the string. You let her in." Eliza pointed behind her, and there stood Luna, no longer hiding, no longer beautiful, just a corpse wrapped in flame. Eliza placed a second straw doll in Sophia's hand. It bore Sophia's own face. "One thread for her, one for you. The balance is law." "If I send Luna," Sophia asked, "what happens to Rachel?" Eliza smiled. "You might save her. You might lose yourself instead. Some fires don't care who they burn." Sophia looked at the string and then at Rachel's face in her memory, laughing in the sun before all of this started. She made her choice. Midnight struck. Sophia pulled the string. The room exploded in flame and then vanished. She was standing in her own home again, but everything was quiet, too quiet. Her phone buzzed once, an anonymous message. "Request confirmed. Payment pending." She dropped the phone. From the hallway came a sound. Rachel's voice. "M." She turned, and there Rachel was. No cracks, no flames, whole again, alive. But behind her, in the reflection of the hallway mirror, Eliza watched. The town was calm the next day. No more strange flyers, no more veils, no more blue flames or burnt offerings. Rachel didn't remember anything. Her memory reset, clean and fragile. Sophia tried to return to normal, but the string reappeared in her locker. This time, it wasn't attached to Luna. It was blank, waiting. And when Sophia looked in the mirror that night, she saw Eliza wearing her face. Rachel was back, but something inside her had changed. She laughed again. She spoke softly, but at night, Sophia would see her standing still in the hallway for hours, staring at the wall. Sometimes, Rachel's voice echoed when she wasn't speaking, and in her dreams, Sophia would see Rachel's shadow move without her. One night, Sophia woke to see Rachel standing beside her bed, smiling blankly. "Thank you for saving me," she whispered. But she didn't leave empty-handed. Rachel's eyes turned jet black. The blank straw doll still sat in Sophia's locker, the red string twitching gently. No name had been written on it, but it pulsed like it was alive. Sophia tried to burn it. It screamed. She buried it under salt. It dug itself out. And then came the dream. Eliza Knight in a cathedral of fire, holding Sophia's reflection in her arms, gently stroking its hair. "You've tasted power, and now the thread binds you. You are next. Or choose someone else." The flame behind Eliza whispered a name. Rachel. Sophia visited the burned-out chapel where Luna had first ascended. The ground was scorched, but something still lived there. She met an old woman in rags who called herself Ash Mother, one of Eliza's forgotten victims. She's not a girl anymore. She's a system, a law of vengeance. She was never meant to save, only to burn what's offered. Sophia asked, "Can the pact be broken?" Ash Mother shook her head. "There is no unburning, only rebalancing. If you don't offer a name, she'll take everything." Rachel collapsed in school. Infirmary said it was exhaustion. Sophia knew better. That night, Rachel's chest began glowing with symbols. Runes burned into her flesh, like a brand. Rachel screamed, "She's trying to come back, through me!" Sophia held her down. Her veins pulsed black. Then, silence. Rachel's voice came out deep, ancient, layered. Payment due. Eliza was inside her. Sophia had only delayed the payment, not avoided it, and now the balance demanded blood. Eliza visited Sophia again, this time, not in a dream. She came through the mirror dripping with ash, holding her own heart in her hand. "Rachel was yours. You offered her pain. Now offer her peace, or burn beside her." Sophia cried, "I don't want anyone to die." Eliza's smile cracked like porcelain. "Then choose, or the debt falls on your bloodline." Behind her, 1,000 burning dolls screamed with stitched mouths. The blank string began writing a name, on its own. Sophia's. Sophia fled the house and returned to the hollow chapel. There, she found other survivors, those who'd made pacts, paid the price, and lived. Some had missing eyes, others lacked voices. They called themselves the Charred. One whispered to Sophia, carving into stone, "To stop the string, you must burn your name from the Book of Vengeance. But the book only appears when you're between life and death." Sophia asked how. They handed her a knife. Bleed. Not to die, but to beg. Sophia stabbed her palm and collapsed at the altar. She fell into the in-between realm, a place made of screaming flame, hanging bodies, and endless mirrors reflecting her sins. There she saw her past, her anger, her jealousy, her whispered wish that Rachel would go through something horrible so she'd finally understand me. Eliza appeared, dragging the Book of Vengeance behind her, chained in flame. "You spoke the curse long before you clicked the link," Sophia cried. "I didn't mean it, but you meant the pain." In front of her, the book opened. 3 names, pulsed. Rachel, Sophia, unknown. "Choose who pays," Eliza whispered. Sophia took the quill. It bled red ink. She scratched her own name off, and replaced it with herself again. "Then let it be done," Eliza said. The world roared in fire, and Sophia's body burned. Sophia woke up, whole, alone. Rachel was safe. Whole. The doll was gone. The thread had stopped, but something followed her back. Now when Sophia walked past mirrors, Eliza wasn't just watching, she was inside them, smiling, and in the dark corners of Sophia's room, a soft chant now echoed. One more name. Just one more name. It had been 6 days since Sophia returned from the Book of Vengeance. Rachel was okay. School was okay. Her parents seemed relieved, but Sophia wasn't. She saw the flame flicker behind people's eyes. She heard whispers through the vents, and when she pressed her ear to her closet door at night, she heard Eliza humming a lullaby. She wasn't free. She was the new gatekeeper. Digging through old boxes in the attic, Sophia found a bundle of aged letters tied with a red ribbon. They were written by her great-grandmother, Margaret Bell, addressed to someone called the Ash Bride. The letters spoke of cleansing sins with fire and offering the undeserving to the veil. One line stood out. We sent her to the fire with no last words, no burial, no kindness. Eliza Knight burned because of us. Sophia's family helped create Hellgirl, and now, Sophia was part of that lineage. Rachel started losing chunks of memory, forgetting who Sophia was, forgetting her own birthday. When Sophia showed her old photos, Rachel stared blankly. Who's that girl next to me? It was her. Rachel's mind was unraveling, as if Eliza was reclaiming what was temporarily spared. Sophia begged the Ash Mother for help. She laughed bitterly. You fed the fire, child. You can't tell it where to stop. Sophia confronted her mother about Margaret Bell's letters. At first, silence, then a whisper. There are women in our bloodline who have used Eliza. We never called her that. We called her the Ash Maiden. She doesn't belong to anyone, but she remembers. What did you do? Sophia asked. Her mother cried. When I was your age, I asked the Ash Maiden to punish someone who hurt me. She came, she burned, and she stayed. You didn't inherit the curse, Sophia. You earned it. Rachel's eyes turned ember red in her sleep. Sometimes she sleepwalked, whispering ancient chants. Sophia caught her in the bathtub once, filling it with ash from the fireplace and soaking in it, smiling as if in a trance. When Sophia tried to wake her, Rachel looked her in the eyes and said, "She's making room inside me." "Who is?" Sophia sobbed. Rachel smiled with cracked lips. "You already know." A new symbol appeared on Sophia's arm. It wasn't from the book. It looked like a chain. A permanent burn. The Ash Mother returned in a vision. It means you are next. Not to be burned, to burn for others. She has chosen you as the next flame bearer. What does that mean? You will be the one who delivers vengeance. You will offer the dolls. You will become what she once was. Sophia screamed. I didn't ask for this. Neither did she. Sophia began seeing dolls again, dozens, hundreds, hanging from trees outside her window, dangling from the school ceiling, all empty, all waiting. Each night, one more would whisper her name. Help me. Give her my pain. Rachel began sleeping on the floor, covered in salt circles. Still, the flame crept up her fingers every night. The curse wasn't targeting her anymore. It was using her. Sophia had a vision. She stood where Eliza once stood, surrounded by villagers, bound to a post. Flames licking at her feet, and then the vision reversed. She was one of the villagers lighting the fire. Suddenly she understood. Eliza's curse wasn't about justice anymore. It was about giving victims the power to become monsters. You must break the cycle, the Ash Mother whispered, or inherit her throne. At dawn, Sophia found another doll waiting on her bed. Not blank. Her mother's name was already on it. The red string gently curled around her finger. She hadn't placed the name. The system had done it for her. And in her sleep, she had begun smiling. Sophia stared at the doll with her mother's name on it. It moved on its own. The red string slowly coiled around Sophia's wrist like a serpent, tightening, then loosening, like it was testing her willingness. She screamed and threw it across the room. It vanished midair and reappeared in her mother's purse the next morning, this time with the string half pulled. Sophia confronted her mother shaking. Holding the doll, her mother didn't flinch. She simply whispered, "I thought if I raised you right, it would skip you." "What did you do?" Sophia shouted. Her mother revealed her mark, a burn just like Sophia's. "I was the flame bearer. I thought I passed it on when I chose my victim long ago." "But you didn't kill her," Sophia whispered. Her mother wept. "No, I made her worse." Sophia returned to the charred chapel. The Book of Vengeance was waiting, open. This time, it held her name at the top. Underneath were hundreds of others, all people she'd thought about punishing. Teachers, bullies, even Rachel once, years ago. Each had a doll beside their name, and above the book, Eliza, dressed in white fire, holding a crown of ash. "Wear it," she said, "or burn with them." Sophia stepped forward. Tears blurred her vision. "What if I burn you instead?" In the heart of flame, Sophia saw it all. Eliza was betrayed by 4 villagers, one of them Sophia's great-grandmother. She wasn't a demon. She was a child of pain, left to die in fire because she refused to forgive. The first curse was a scream. The first doll was a voodoo effigy of her own broken heart. "They made me this," Eliza whispered. "I only gave what I was taught. And now you teach it again." Rachel was gone. No traces, no struggle, no footprints, just a scorched handprint on the bedroom ceiling, and on her bed, a black doll. No string, just ash. The note on it read, "This is what mercy costs." Sophia broke down. She knew it wasn't about Rachel anymore. This was about stopping it for good. Sophia learned from the Ash Mother about a final ritual. To end the curse, a flame bearer must call all names back from the book, burn themselves in place. A vengeance, refuse the name of a victim. If done right, the curse collapses in on itself. If failed, the soul becomes a permanent vessel for Eliza. Sophia returned to the book. It resisted her touch, until she whispered, "Take my name, and give back the rest." The chapel cracked open. Reality twisted. The ground bled fire. Eliza screamed, not in rage, but in fear. The book exploded into shards. Dolls burst into flame, flying like dying birds. The ash crown split in 2. Eliza, now a child again, begged Sophia, "Please, don't end me. I only wanted to be remembered." Sophia held her as the fire rose. "I remember you, and that's why I can forgive you. No one ever did." Sophia awoke alone in the chapel, covered in soot. No book, no dolls, no fire. Rachel was back, asleep at home, dreaming peacefully. Sophia's burn mark was gone. The mirror no longer reflected anything but her. Outside, the wind was quiet, but carved into the last pew of the chapel was one final message. The cycle is broken, but the memory burns forever. Sophia teaches folklore at a local school. She warns of stories that grow when whispered. One day, a student brings her an old burnt straw doll they found in the woods. No string, no name, just ash in the seams. Sophia smiles, gently placing it in a locked drawer. Some fires don't go out. They say time heals all wounds. Whoever said that never had to watch their wife's body pulled from a wreck at 3:17 a.m. I don't sleep much anymore. When I do, I dream of that night. The way her voice cracked through the phone just before. The line went dead, the static, the screech, the silence. That cursed stretch of highway, long and empty, just like I am now. I light another cigarette, even though I quit 2 years ago. My doctor says I'm flirting with a heart attack. Let it come. Maybe it'll feel like justice. I sit in the dark, radio off, patrol car humming low beneath me like a tired beast. The town sleeps. I don't. I haven't since she died. Not really. People think cops are made of iron. We aren't. We just bleed. Slower. It's funny. You spend your life chasing bad guys, and in the end, it's a patch of black asphalt that ruins everything. Mile marker 43. That's where she died. A hit and run. No suspects. No witnesses. Just a shadow caught in the last frame of a shattered dash cam. Tall. Pale. Draped in black. Looked like a woman. Didn't look human. They called it a trick of the light. I called it bullshit. Now every night I drive this same loop. Same stretch of road. Same gnawing feeling in my gut. I tell myself it's for closure. Truth is, I'm waiting for her. Or whatever took her. The department thinks I'm losing it. They put me on leave. Told me to see a shrink. Instead, I kept the keys to Unit 12 and started chasing ghosts. Tonight, the sky's heavier than usual. Cloud cover so thick, even the moon looks afraid to show its face. And that road, it's darker than I remember. Deeper somehow. Like it wants to swallow something. Or someone. I flick on the high beams. Nothing but road. And yet, I feel it. Again, that tug in my chest. The pull of memory. The cold breath of something that's not there. I grip the wheel tighter. The clock reads 3:12 a.m. Almost time. They told me to stay off the radar. Take time. Heal. Let it go. But grief doesn't obey orders, and neither do I. The voicemail came in at 11:47 p.m., just as I was pouring a double shot of whiskey, the cheap kind that doesn't ask questions. Detective Jones, I know you're not active anymore, but I didn't know who else to call. My son, he's gone. Vanished. His car was found near mile marker 43. No blood. No signs of struggle. Just the car, door wide open, engine still running. And his shoes. Please. She sounded young, maybe late 30s. A mother pushed to the edge. The kind of voice you can't ignore. I didn't call her back. Didn't need to. That stretch of highway has a way of collecting people, chews them up, spits out questions no one wants to answer. I glanced at the evidence box shoved under the passenger seat. Inside, my wife's necklace. A twisted piece of glass from her windshield. A photocopy of the police report I rewrote a dozen times trying to make sense of it. And a flash drive. The dashcam footage. I've watched it 126 times. A shape walks into the road. The car swerves. There's a scream. End of file. The last time I saw her alive, she was driving that road. Now someone else is gone. Same place, same hour, same damn emptiness. Coincidence? No such thing anymore. I check my service weapon. Fully. Loaded. I know it won't help, but it makes the fear feel manageable. Fear is easier to carry than regret. I dial the number from the voicemail. She answers on the first ring. Mrs. Dalton? This is Jones. I want everything you know about your son's disappearance. Every detail. Silence, then a choked breath. You believe me? I don't answer. What I believe doesn't matter. Because whatever's out there, it's still hungry. I met her just before dawn, at the edge of a rusted gas station near the outskirts of town. The kind of place where the fluorescent lights buzz louder than the silence between people. Mrs. Dalton looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. Hair tangled, eyes red, hope stretched too thin to hold on to. She clutched a folded photo, like a lifeline, and shoved it into my hands. "This is Caleb," she whispered. 17, honors student, stayed out of trouble. He was driving home from a friend's house. Then he just vanished. The photo showed a kid with crooked glasses and a soft smile. He didn't look like the kind of boy who'd run away. "What time was he last seen?" I asked. She blinked, struggling to focus. About 3:15 a.m., his phone pinged near that road. Of course it did. Mile marker 43, I already knew what I'd find before I arrived at the scene. The patrol car felt heavier as I pulled onto the long stretch of two-lane nothing. The sky was still wrapped in ash-colored clouds, and the wind carried that eerie stillness, like the earth was holding its breath. There it was, a black Honda Civic pulled over on the shoulder. Driver's door open, headlights dim, one sneaker lying a few feet from the white line. The other, sitting neatly on the center stripe. I stepped out. Gravel crunched under my boots like bones snapping. No blood, no skid marks, no struggle, just absence. Something about the air felt wrong. Thick. Too quiet. I leaned into the car and found the keys still in the ignition. A faint static hiss whispered from the radio. I reached over to turn it off, but then I heard it. Faint. Warped through. The static. Jones, help me. My chest locked up. That voice. No, it couldn't be. Her voice. I yanked the key out and stepped back, heart hammering like I was fresh out of the academy. A cold gust blew through me, bringing with it the smell of roses. Faint. Wrong. My wife wore rose-scented perfume. She always said it reminded her of funerals. I turned back to the highway. It stretched into the darkness like it had no end, like time itself bent along its curves. And there, standing just past the mile marker, was a figure. Tall. Still. Draped in black. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. But I swear, she smiled, and then, like smoke, she disappeared. The figure vanished, but her presence clung to the air like humidity. Thick, invisible, suffocating. I stood there for a long moment, heart drumming in my ears, pulse in my throat. My hand hovered near my holster, but I didn't draw. What good's a bullet against something that doesn't cast a shadow? This wasn't my first ghost on this road. I took a slow breath, then another. The Civic still idled behind me like it had no idea its driver was never coming back. Something tugged at the edge of my memory. Her smile. Not the pale imitation I'd just seen, but the real one. My wife, Rachel. The way she'd smile half asleep, asking me to stay 5 more minutes, before I left for another night shift. I used to hate being late. Now I hate being early. I walked to mile marker 43, stared at it like I had every week since the accident. The metal sign was warped at the corners, like it had been twisted by heat or rage. I ran my hand along it. Cold, solid, real. But the road behind it wasn't. It shimmered like oil on water, like the air wasn't quite finished forming. I stepped forward and felt nothing. Not asphalt, not dirt, just blank. The same feeling you get when you forget why. You walked into a room, like reality had hiccuped. I backed away quickly. Then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Carved into the base of the sign, almost invisible unless you were right on top of it. She walks after 3. My blood ran cold. That phrase. I'd seen it in an old report. A teenager years ago who went missing on this very road. His mother said he was obsessed with an urban legend about a woman in black who appeared at 3 a.m. and lured drivers off the road. Everyone dismissed it as paranoia. Just another myth wrapped around tragedy. But it's not a myth. It's a warning, and I've been ignoring it. Back in the car, I dug through my old files. Rachel's accident, unexplained vanishings, archived 911 calls, all dismissed, all forgotten. But there was a pattern forming. Every disappearance happened between 3 and 3:20 a.m. Always near the same bend, always near mile marker 43. A few were even caught on video, but none of the footage ever showed what happened after the car stopped. Just static, and sometimes whispers. I looked at the clock on the dash. 2:57 a.m. I gripped the wheel. My hands were shaking. 3 minutes to go. I wasn't leaving. Not this time. The dashboard clock ticked over like a death sentence. I sat still in the driver's seat, parked just past mile marker 43. Engine off, lights off, windows cracked to let in the night. Not that night needed an invitation out here. It was already inside me. I didn't blink, didn't breathe too loud. Waited. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called once, then went silent, like it realized it shouldn't have made a sound. And then, it started. Not with footsteps, not with some dramatic flash or scream, just absence. The crickets stopped chirping. The wind died. The trees along the roadside froze as if the world was holding its breath. Then, the temperature dropped, fast. My breath misted in the air like smoke, and goosebumps crawled down my arms. I saw the frost gather across the windshield even though it was a spring night. And then came the scent. Roses. Faint, wilted, sour. I heard a soft tapping on the roof of my car. Once, twice, 3 times. I drew my weapon, hand steady but useless. I didn't move yet, didn't dare. A low hum began to rise. Not mechanical, not natural. It sounded like a woman humming a lullaby through her teeth, out of tune and far too slow. It scraped something inside me I didn't know could still hurt. Then, I saw her, through the rearview mirror. A woman in black, long dress trailing behind her like it was underwater, hair like wet rope stuck to her face. She stood just outside the back of the car, not moving, not blinking, just watching. I turned to face her. She was gone. I whipped, my head to the left. There she was, face inches from the glass, pale, hollow-eyed, smiling. No breath fogged the window. No sound. Just that smile. Wide and too full of teeth, like her mouth remembered hunger. I raised the gun. "Don't," she whispered. Voice muffled by the glass, but perfectly clear in my mind. I froze. My arms wouldn't move. My legs locked. Like her words reached past my ears and directly into my bones. She walks after 3. She walks after 3. She walks after 3. The chant played in my head like a looped nursery rhyme from a broken toy. I clenched my jaw and forced my arm to move, to do anything. And then, bang! The window shattered, not from my gun, from the inside. I was outside the car, on the pavement, gasping like I'd forgotten how to breathe. My head pounded. My gun was gone. The door was open. I scrambled up, hands shaking, blood dripping from my forehead. The road was empty again. So was the car. So was my phone. So was I. And then I saw it. Carved into the frost on the inside of the windshield. She chose you. I sat in the middle of the road, knees scraped, blood drying on my temple, staring at the message scrawled in frost. She chose you. The words lingered even after the ice melted. Why me? I'd spent my life chasing monsters. Gangs, dealers, murderers. But those were flesh and blood. Predictable. This thing, it didn't follow rules. It made them. I needed answers. I slammed the car door shut and started the engine, the headlights flickering like they weren't sure if they wanted to help me or not. The radio turned itself on. Static, as always. But not just static this time. Underneath, the white noise was something else. A voice. At first it was like hearing someone whisper through a wall. Then it got clearer. Still broken, still warped. But there, a child's voice. "Help me. Please." I cranked the volume. My hands were trembling. Mommy said not to stop. The lady in the road, she's not real. But she's smiling now. It cut out. Silence. Then the station changed. On its own. Click, click, click. Then a man's voice. Older. Ragged with fear. She stands in the trees. Don't blink. Don't stop. If you see her, don't speak. The signal warped again. She knows your name now. The radio screamed. High-pitched static like metal tearing. I punched the power button, yanking the cord loose. But even with the radio off, I could still hear it. Faint, underneath my thoughts, like it had burrowed in. The voice changed one last time. This time it was Rachel. Soft. Sad. "You should have come with me, Jones." I froze. No, you're gone. She showed me the way. You'll see, soon. My hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles went white. Then the radio burst back to life. Only this time, it played a familiar song. Our wedding song. No station, no signal. Just a memory that doesn't belong on FM. I slammed the brakes and pulled to the shoulder, breathing hard. Somewhere behind the trees, I swore I saw movement. A flicker of black fabric. A whisper of pale skin. And then, a sound I'll never forget. The sound of someone knocking on my backseat window from the inside. But I was alone in the car. I didn't turn around. I just stared ahead. And prayed to a God I wasn't sure was still listening. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. That knock. That slow, deliberate tap from inside my own car. It was the kind of sound that didn't need volume to terrify. Just rhythm. Just intent. Tap. Tap. Pause. Tap. Whoever or whatever was back there knew I could hear it. Knew I was frozen in place. Breath caught somewhere between my chest and throat. Say my name. A whisper. So faint I almost believed I imagined it. But I didn't. It came from the back seat. I gripped the wheel like it was the last solid thing left in this world. Say my name, Jones. My name. My real name. Not just officer. Not just cop. She knew me. The urge to look in the rearview mirror was overwhelming. But some instinct, old and primal, told me not to. Told me if I made eye contact, it would all be over. The ones who see her face never leave the road. That line from an old report echoed in my mind like a warning from a time traveler. A teenage girl had said it in a 911 call just before. Her phone went dead. Her body was never found. I turned off the ignition, stepped out into the night, every hair on my body standing at attention. Behind me, the car sat still, silent. Nothing moved inside. No breath on the glass. No handprint. No face. And yet, the feeling of being watched burned into the back of my skull like a spotlight. I walked a few steps down the road. The wind had stopped. No insects. No birds. No sound. And then I noticed it. The road ahead was changing. It looked the same at first, but with each step forward, the trees leaned in a little more, their branches stretching like fingers. The asphalt cracked in ways it hadn't before. A yellow line peeled and slithered like skin off a snake, and then I saw the sign. Mile marker 43. Again, but I'd already passed it. I turned around. It was behind me too. 2 mile marker 43's front and back. I was trapped. And the road. It knew me. The yellow line beneath my feet shifted again. Not just cracked, moved like it was breathing. Single voice echoed through the trees. Not loud, but enough to make my stomach twist. You don't leave until she's done with you. I don't know how long I stood there, trapped between 2 identical mile markers, breathing in air that felt thicker by the second, like the road itself was closing in. The forest on both sides of the pavement stretched tall and dark. The trees no longer just trees. They looked posed, watching, waiting. And then I saw her. Not on the road, not near the car, but between the trees, still, silent, staring straight at me. Her face was just visible in the sliver of moonlight slicing through the branches. Hair black and stringy, like she'd been drowned and left to dry in the dark. Her dress swayed, but there was no wind. Her body didn't move, but her head tilted, unnaturally slow, as if testing me, measuring something. I called out without meaning to. "Who are you?" No answer, just her face. Too pale, too long, the eyes too wide, like a mask stretched over something that wanted to be human and couldn't quite get it right. Then she smiled, and every animal instinct inside me screamed, "Run!" But I didn't. She raised one hand and pointed behind me, back toward my car. Back toward where I'd heard the knock. I turned, half expecting someone, or something, to be waiting there. Nothing. I looked back toward the trees. She was gone. But the sound that followed would haunt me forever. Dozens of branches snapping, one after the other, rapid fire, like something huge was moving through the woods, fast, coming closer. And then, just before I turned to run, I saw the eyes, dozens of them, between trunks, in shadows, watching, unblinking. She wasn't alone. I sprinted, back to the car, heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. The air behind me was alive with sound now, low whispers, thudding footsteps that didn't quite sound human, and that damned lullaby again. That off-key tune hummed just loud enough to twist my stomach. I jumped in the car and slammed the door, but as I started the engine, I saw it in the mirror, just for a second. She was sitting in the back seat. She was behind me. I saw her face in the rearview mirror, smiling, calm, like she'd always been there. My heart thudded so hard it rattled my ribs. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Instead, I stared at her reflection. Pale skin like wax. Lips slightly parted, revealing teeth too straight, too white, like porcelain doll parts jammed into a human skull. And her eyes, they didn't reflect light. That's when I knew she wasn't just in the car. She was in me. "Drive," she whispered. It didn't come from her mouth. It came from the mirror, the radio, my bones, everywhere. I put the car in drive and slowly rolled forward, hands shaking on the wheel. The mile marker passed by again, 43. Still. Again. Always. "Do you remember what you did?" she asked. Her voice was right in my ear now, though she hadn't moved. I didn't answer. I couldn't remember anything I was supposed to feel guilty for. At least not the kind of guilt that birthed something like her. "You left her when she needed you." My grip tightened. "I tried," I said, voice cracking, but not hard enough. The air inside the car grew colder. The windshield began to fog up, and then, slowly, frost drew lines across the glass. Letters, RACHELMI. Wife's name, again. "No," I whispered. "This isn't real. You're not her. You're just..." But the mirror flickered, like a broken screen. And suddenly the face in the back seat was Rachel. Hair tucked behind her ear. The same little scar above her lip from the bike crash in college. Eyes filled with that warm, quiet kindness I'd forgotten how much I missed. "Jones," she said, tears in her voice. "Why didn't you come with me?" The car slowed. A part of me, the part that still dreamed of her every night, wanted to believe, to pull over, to go wherever she wanted. But I remembered something. Rachel died in a hospital bed. This thing never said how she died, never got the details right, never blinked, and now her eyes, they weren't Rachel's anymore. They were black, bottomless. The illusion melted like smoke. She was back, the woman, and she was laughing. No sound. Just shaking with a grin that split too wide across her face. I swerved, slammed on the brakes. The car skidded sideways into a ditch, metal grinding against something sharp. When the dust settled, the mirror was cracked, and she was gone. The only thing left in the back seat was a black lace ribbon, just like the one Rachel used to wear in her hair, and it smelled like her perfume. I sat there, staring, at the lace ribbon in my hand, fingers trembling. The perfume smell lingered, almost sickeningly sweet, like I had just stepped into a memory that wasn't mine to relive. But it was mine. All of it. Every part of it. I wanted to scream, to break something, to punch the air out of my lungs and shout that this wasn't real, but my voice felt empty. The ribbon wasn't just a memento, it was a warning, like she had left me something to remember her by, something to hold on to until she decided what to do with me. I dropped it in the passenger seat, wiping my hands on my jeans, trying to shake the image of Rachel's face out of my head. This wasn't her. It couldn't be. It was something else. Something using her memory, twisting it until it made me want to believe. I started the car again, barely aware of the engine's hum. I was on autopilot, driving to nowhere, following the same road that kept shifting beneath me, and then I noticed it, the radio. It had switched on by itself, the dial flipping, stations bleeding into one another. The static wasn't the usual hum anymore. This time there were voices, low, distant, and then, like a switch had flipped, the voices became clearer. One voice, a man, he was speaking, but it didn't sound like a regular broadcast. "Jones, you shouldn't have come. You shouldn't have looked." The voice was familiar. I gripped the wheel harder, trying to stay focused. "Who is this?" I muttered to the empty car. "It's not her you should worry about, Jones. It's what's after her. The thing in the woods. It's not waiting for you. It's hunting." I froze, my blood running cold. The static cut in again, like it was trying to drown out the man's voice, but it kept cutting through, stronger now. "Don't look back." The words were clearer than anything else I'd heard on the radio that night. They weren't just static anymore. They were a warning, a command. And then the radio clicked off. Complete silence. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see her face again. The woman in the trees. But there was nothing. I blinked. Then again. And then I saw it. It wasn't in the mirror. It was in the trees. Far in the distance, just off the side of the road. A flicker of motion. Pale skin against the darkness. She was there. I swerved again, jerking the wheel to the side. The car lurched, tires screeching as I fought to regain control. The headlights caught something in the trees. Her. But not just her. There was something else moving behind her. Something tall, thin and fast. Too fast. I couldn't see its face, but I knew it was watching me, and I knew it was not human. I hit the gas. I didn't care where the road went anymore. I was done thinking. I was done trying to understand. I drove. Straight. Fast. And yet, every time I glanced at the trees, she was still there. Standing. Watching. Waiting. The road stretched on, endless. No turns, no exits. Just asphalt winding through the suffocating dark. The headlights barely illuminated the way ahead, and every time I looked to the side, she was there. Always there. I kept driving, faster and faster, like I could outrun whatever nightmare had wrapped itself around me. But it didn't matter how fast I went. The feeling was the same. I wasn't in control anymore. The car hummed beneath me, its engine growling like a beast sensing prey. The road refused to let me leave. The trees grew taller now, closing in. The shadows deepened. It felt like the night itself was becoming a living thing, stretching its fingers across the land to pull me back. I looked ahead. Something was different. The horizon, the light. It was almost wrong. Too bright, too sharp. A silhouette, figure in the distance. I slammed the brakes, the tires screeching in protest, but it wasn't enough. The car skidded, sliding toward the figure, and then, as if the road itself had swallowed it whole, the figure vanished. My heart stopped. It was gone. I came to a sudden halt, the car shaking with the force of the stop. Sat there, staring at the empty road ahead, the lights flickering as the engine sputtered. I was alone, or at least I thought I was. But then, through the silence, I heard it. A voice. Soft, whispering. Not from the radio this time, not from the back seat, but from outside the car. I told you. You don't leave until she's done with. You. It wasn't her voice. It wasn't the woman. It was something older, something darker. I turned to the side. She was there, right outside the window, staring at me through the glass, her face distorted, her smile too wide. I rolled the window down, barely able to hold my breath. The air was thick, like I was breathing water, and she spoke. "Do you remember what you did?" I froze. The words hit harder than anything else tonight. My hands clenched the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I didn't respond. I couldn't. But she wasn't waiting for an answer. Her face inched closer to the glass, and her smile stretched even wider until it looked like it could swallow me whole. I felt it. The weight. The pressure. I wasn't alone. I wasn't the one watching. I wasn't the one alive. The road was alive. And I had been driving toward my own end. I don't know when it happened. 1 minute, I was sitting in the car, staring at her, distorted smile through the glass. The next, I was walking. The trees surrounded me. The forest had swallowed the road, leaving only shadows and thick darkness. My feet moved by their own accord, shuffling through the underbrush. I couldn't stop them. I couldn't stop anything. "You shouldn't have followed me," she whispered, her voice too close, right behind me, but I couldn't look. "Now you're mine." I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight. But the moment I opened my mouth, the words caught in my throat, smothered by the suffocating air. The forest had become a maze, trees twisted like gnarled fingers reaching out to grab me. The shadows stretched impossibly long, flickering at the edges of my vision, as though they were alive. I stumbled forward, my breath shallow and panicked. I could still hear her footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate, like she was savoring every moment. Then came the sound, a faint crackle in the distance. Something else was moving in the forest, too fast to see, but close enough to feel its presence. I couldn't tell if it was her, or something worse. I looked up. The moon was barely visible through the thick canopy of trees, but something didn't feel right. The trees, they were watching me. I stopped. The ground felt different beneath my feet. Spongy, wet, like I was standing on something that shouldn't have been there. Something ancient, something that had never seen the light of day. Then in the distance, a faint light flickered. A fire. Maybe. I took a step toward it, and then the forest shifted. The path I had been following disappeared. Trees moved. The ground buckled beneath me. I stumbled backward, but I couldn't escape the feeling that the forest wasn't just changing. It was controlling me. That's when I saw it. A figure, far ahead, beneath the flickering light. A woman. No, not a woman. Not anymore. Her skin was pale, stretched tight over brittle bones. Her hair hung in tangled black strands. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. Hollow. Her mouth opened in a wide, silent scream. A scream that echoed in my chest, even though there was no sound. And in the darkness, behind her, I saw more. Shapes, figures, twisting things, shadows. They were all staring at me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't run. Was trapped. The woman in front of me tilted her head, as if curious, like she was waiting for me to do something. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the forest fell silent. The figures vanished. The trees stood still, their branches now low enough to almost touch the ground. And she was gone. I didn't wait. I turned and ran. Every step a struggle, every breath a fight. But the woods didn't want me to leave. I could hear the whispers. Faint at first, then louder, clearer. You're already gone. I didn't dare look back, not this time. I didn't need to. Because I knew I wasn't running from her anymore. I was running from the forest, the thing that had already decided I would never leave. I ran. I ran faster than I ever thought possible, but the ground seemed to stretch endlessly beneath me. The trees moved with me, closing in from all sides, their branches reaching down like claws, scraping at my skin, tearing through my clothes. The forest was alive. I felt it now, more than ever. I wasn't just a traveler anymore. I was prey. The whispers were louder, growing more frantic, as though the very air around me was alive with voices. They were calling my name. Jones. Jones, you can't escape. I tried to push the words out of my head, but they burrowed in like insects. The farther I ran, the more they filled my mind, echoing off the walls of my skull. I wasn't even sure which direction I was going anymore. The path had disappeared, replaced by a twisting maze of trees and shadows. I stopped. I didn't mean to, but my legs were shaking too violently to continue. I had to breathe, just for a moment, just enough to get my bearings. But that was my mistake. I stood there panting, staring at the dark expanse around me. The wind picked up, the trees groaning as though they were stretching, reaching for something. And then from the darkness ahead, I saw something move, a shape. Faint at first, but growing clearer. A figure. Not a woman this time, but something far. Worse, it was tall. Unnaturally tall. Its limbs too long, too thin. It moved like liquid, slithering through the shadows. Its face, if it had one, hidden beneath a tangle of black hair. I froze. I couldn't move. I could hear its breath. Guttural, ragged, like it was savoring my fear. Its eyes glowed faintly, like embers in the dark. It wasn't human. Nothing about it was human. "You're still here, Jones," it rasped, the voice a deep, twisted mockery of a man's. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even think. It took a step toward me. The earth shuddered beneath it, and the ground seemed to ripple, bending to its will. Every time it moved, the air thickened. The atmosphere grew heavier, like I was drowning in the very presence of it. "This is the end," it whispered. "You should have stayed on the road." The moment it spoke, everything changed. The forest erupted into chaos. The ground cracked open, splitting wide, trees collapsing in on themselves. The thing before me didn't move. It just stood there, watching, waiting. And then, I heard her. Her voice. Soft. Familiar. "Rachel. Jones. Please." I whipped around, my heart hammering in my chest. The air felt like it was closing in on me, suffocating me. But when I looked, I saw nothing. Only darkness. Her voice was fading, lost in the shifting air. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't running from just the forest. I was running from myself. Everything I had done, every choice I had made, had led me here. To this moment. To this end. I could feel it now. The pull. The cold, invisible hand that had been guiding me. The forest wasn't just alive. It was feeding off me, feeding off my fear, my guilt, my pain. Every step had drawn me deeper into its grasp, and I had no way out. The thing that had been watching me stepped forward. It was right behind me now, its breath like fire against my neck. "It's too late, Jones. You've already crossed the line." I closed my eyes. This was it. There was no escaping, no more running. I could feel the presence closing in around me, filling every inch of the air, the trees, the shadows, the very ground beneath me. They were all alive, and they were all waiting. And then, a voice, Rachel's voice, broke through the silence. "It's not too late." I opened my eyes, but the forest was still there. The creature was still there. I was still trapped. But somehow, in the chaos of it all, I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. And maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to escape, a chance to survive. But that chance was slipping away fast. Rachel's voice was all I had left, a whisper carried on the wind. But it wasn't enough. Nothing was enough anymore. The forest was closing in, the darkness thickening around me, suffocating. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on my chest, pushing the air from my lungs. I was trapped, but Rachel's words, "It's not too late," kept echoing in my mind. They were a lifeline, a shred of hope that kept me from crumbling into the darkness. I turned. The creature was still there, towering above me, its eyes glowing with a malevolent fire. It wasn't moving. It didn't need to. The air itself was bending to its will, thick with malice and despair. I wasn't running anymore. I couldn't. "You think you can escape, Jones?" The creature's voice was like gravel scraping against bone. "You're already part of it, part of me." I didn't respond. What could I say? It was right. Every step I'd taken since I left the road had been a step deeper into its world. I could feel it now, in every fiber of my being. The forest had claimed me. But Rachel's voice, though faint, still called to me. "Remember what you did. You have to remember." I did remember. I couldn't forget it. The accident, the guilt, the pain. Rachel, the woman I loved, gone in an instant, her face frozen in terror as the car plunged into the river. And me? I had walked away. I had survived, had left her behind. I stumbled back, my body shaking with the weight of the memory. Was that the price? Was that why I was here? Why I was being torn apart by this forest? The creature stepped closer. I could feel its breath on my neck, hot and foul. It was whispering now, but it wasn't speaking to me. It was speaking through me. "You left her. You left her to die. And now you'll never leave." I wanted to scream, to run, to fight back. But my legs wouldn't move. My body wouldn't obey me. I was paralyzed, trapped in the web the forest had spun around me. The ground beneath me trembled. The trees groaned, their branches reaching toward me like twisted fingers, pulling at my clothes, at my skin. The forest was alive, and it wanted me to stay. But then, I saw it. Through the haze of darkness, I saw something different. A flicker of light, small but growing brighter with each passing second. I couldn't tell if it was real, if it was another illusion, another trap. But I had to try. I forced myself to move, to drag my feet through the suffocating dirt and tangled roots. I was so close, I could almost feel the warmth of the light. I was going to escape. But then, the ground shifted again. I stumbled, falling to my knees. The forest seemed to laugh. Low, guttural, the sound of something ancient and wicked. I turned, but the creature was gone. The path, the light, everything was gone. The darkness was closing in again. The voice came again, softer this time. Rachel's voice. It's not too late. You can still make it right. I didn't know what that meant. Could I fix this? Could I undo the past? Undo the mistakes I had made? Could I? The answer came, not in words, but in the feel of it, in the sudden clarity that washed over me. The forest wasn't just the thing that had trapped me. It was a reflection of everything I had done. The guilt, the pain, the choices I had made. I had to face it. I had to face myself. The creature's voice echoed again, deeper now, shaking the very earth beneath me. It's too late to turn back. There is no redemption. I didn't care anymore. I had lost everything. I had no family, no life left to return to. But maybe, just maybe, if I faced the thing that had been haunting me all along, the guilt, the fear, the truth, I could find a way out. I stood up, trembling, but I stood. I'm not running anymore. The forest fell silent. The trees stood, still. The shadows paused, and for the first time, I didn't feel its grip on me. I was still trapped, but I could feel the difference. I wasn't running from it anymore. I wasn't running from myself. I had to face this. To survive, I had to make the choice to accept the consequences of what I had done. I had to forgive myself. And maybe then, the forest would let me go. The silence hung in the air like a heavy fog, pressing in on me from all sides. The darkness felt different now, less like a predator, and more like a mirror. The trees stood still, the wind no longer howling through the branches. Everything was quiet, almost too quiet. I felt the weight of it all. The crushing sense of guilt, regret, and loss. For the first time, I could see it clearly. All the choices I'd made, the things I'd buried so deep inside me. It wasn't just the forest that had claimed me. It was the baggage I'd been dragging with me all my life. Rachel. Her face, her smile, the way she used to laugh. Gone. I had walked away, and I hadn't looked back. I had buried it. Buried her, like everything else I wanted to forget. But here, in the heart of this forest, in the face of whatever dark force had drawn me in, there was no escaping it. The creature, the shadow that had haunted me for so long, was no longer behind me. It had faded into the night, or maybe it had never been there at all. What mattered now was that I was alone. Alone with my own thoughts, my own conscience. I took a step forward, my legs shaking beneath me, as if the ground itself was testing my resolve. There is no escape, Jones. The voice came again, but it wasn't the creature's voice anymore. It was Rachel's. Soft, almost pleading, real. I closed my eyes. The choice was simple, really. I could give in. Let the guilt consume me. Let the forest swallow me whole and disappear into the darkness. A shell of the man I once was. Or I could choose something else. I could choose to live. Not just survive, but actually live. To face what I had done. To finally confront the past that had been holding me back and forgive myself. To let go of the fear, the loneliness that had been gnawing at me for years. The ground beneath me trembled again, but this time I didn't flinch. I felt the weight of my own decision, heavy in my chest. It was time to choose. The path forward was unclear, uncertain. But wasn't that the point? It had always been about choice. The choice to step off the road, to ignore the warnings, to keep running from the truth. And now, it was about making a choice to face it, to turn and confront everything that had brought me here. "You're still here, aren't you?" the voice whispered. But this time, it wasn't threatening. It was sad, almost pitying. I could feel the forest, the weight of the past pressing in from all directions. It was suffocating, but I was no longer afraid. Not of it. Not of what I had done. I took another step, moving deeper into the unknown. I didn't know what awaited me on the other side of the trees, what awaited me in the night, but I knew this much. I could not go back. "The choice is yours," the voice said, softer now, as though it were fading, as though it were giving me the final freedom I had sought. I closed my eyes one last time, letting the silence wash over me, letting the weight of the past drift away, and then I made my choice. I stepped forward, into the dark, into the unknown. And for the first time in years, I was no longer afraid. The moment my foot touched the ground, everything shifted. The air, once thick and oppressive, now felt lighter. It was as if the very world around me had exhaled, releasing the pressure that had been mounting for so long. But something else had shifted as well. The trees, the dark silhouettes that had once seemed to stretch toward me, now appeared different. The trunks, gnarled and twisted, still loomed around me, but they didn't seem so threatening. In fact, they almost seemed welcoming. I didn't understand what had changed. I wasn't sure I wanted to. But as I moved deeper into the forest, the silence that had surrounded me seemed to hum with a subtle energy, like the beating of a heart. "It's not over, Jones." The voice came again, but this time it wasn't Rachel's. It wasn't even the creature's. It was my own. The thought echoed in my mind, clear and undeniable. "It's not over." And it wasn't. I could feel it, deep in my bones, the undeniable truth. Whatever this place was, whatever this forest represented, it wasn't some simple curse. It wasn't just a manifestation of guilt or fear. This was something alive. I moved through the darkened woods, the path twisting and turning before me like an endless maze. The air grew colder, and with each step, the shadows seemed to deepen. I could hear the rustling of leaves, the snapping of twigs underfoot. But there was something else, something more distinct. Footsteps. At first I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but then I heard it again. Slow, deliberate steps, just behind me. I turned, expecting to see something in the shadows, but there was nothing. Only the darkness, the stillness. I quickened my pace, but the footsteps remained, always a step behind. I wasn't alone. It was following me, and that's when I saw it. In the distance, just ahead, there was a faint light. A flicker, like a candle burning in the distance, small but real. I had to reach it. I had to know what it was. The footsteps grew louder, closer now. I could feel the presence behind me, like a weight pressing down on my back. I didn't turn. I couldn't. I had to keep moving, keep pushing forward. The light grew brighter as I approached, and soon I realized it wasn't just a light. It was a door. A doorway, carved into the trunks of the trees, bathed in an ethereal glow. It looked like nothing I had ever seen before, like something out of a dream, or a nightmare. I stopped, my heart racing. The footsteps stopped too. I stood there, for what felt like an eternity, staring at the door. I could feel its pull, like it was calling to me, urging me forward, but a part of me hesitated. What was on the other side? I had faced my past, my guilt, and made my choice. But now, with this door before me, I had to make another. The light from the door flickered again, casting long shadows on the ground. I could almost hear whispers, distant voices, carried on the wind. My mind raced. Was this another trap? Another illusion? "You know what you must do," the voice, my voice, whispered again, this time clearer than ever. "You can't escape. What you are, you can only face it." I took a deep breath, my hands shaking as I reached for the handle. But as my fingers brushed the cool wood, something stopped me. A flash of memory. Rachel's face, her smile, the way she used to hold my hand. The love that I had abandoned. The pain that I had buried, and for the first time I felt it. Forgiveness. It wasn't something I could simply give myself, or anyone else. It was something I had to earn. Something I could only find on the other side of that door. I turned the handle. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a blinding light beyond. And as I stepped through, I realized the truth. I wasn't escaping. I was returning. The light beyond the door wasn't blinding, as I had expected. Instead, it was soft, enveloping me like a warm blanket, comforting, yet unsettling. As I stepped through, I felt the world shift beneath my feet. The ground was no longer the damp, uneven earth of the forest. It was smooth, solid, almost metallic. The trees, the shadows, the twisted darkness that had once surrounded me. All of it disappeared in an instant. I was no longer in the forest. I was in a hallway. It stretched far in both directions, an endless passageway lined with tall, arched windows. But the windows didn't show anything outside. Instead, they reflected my own face, my own image, as if I were looking into a mirror that went on forever. My reflection twisted, contorted, and with each step I took, it grew more distorted, becoming a grotesque version of me, the darkness that had been inside me. The hallway seemed to stretch infinitely. The walls were smooth, cold to the touch, and the floor was made of some kind of reflective metal, like polished glass. I could hear my footsteps echoing, each step sounding louder than the last. But there was no turning back now. I had crossed the threshold. There was no more forest, no more road. There was only this, the place where everything had led me. I moved forward, the weight of every decision I had made pressing down on me. I could feel the path ahead of me, as though it were calling me toward something, toward the end of something. But I couldn't tell what that was. Then, as I walked, I heard it, a faint whisper, a voice, so soft it was almost lost in the hum of the hallway. But it was there. "It's not just about you anymore, Jones." I froze. The voice wasn't my own this time. It wasn't the creature either. It was her. "You're not alone in here." Rachel's voice echoed, but there was something different about it. Hollow, as if it was coming from a place far beyond reach. "You've never been alone." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. How could she be here? Was this another illusion? Another trick of the forest? Or had I really crossed into something else? Something darker? I didn't have time to answer. The hallway ahead of me twisted, the walls bending as if they were alive, and I was forced to take a step back, the path shifting beneath my feet. The whisper grew louder. I could hear it now, feel it crawling inside my head. The memories, Rachel's face, her touch, the night she left me. I reached out for the nearest window. My reflection stared back at me, but it wasn't just me anymore. It was us. Rachel and I, standing side by side. "You can't escape it. Not even here," her voice continued, barely a whisper now, but it was undeniable. "You have to face it, the guilt, the truth. It will never leave you until you do." I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to face it, but I knew she was right. The truth had always been here, just beneath the surface. I had buried it deep inside myself, but I couldn't outrun it forever. The hallway stretched endlessly before me, but now I knew that every step I took wasn't leading me away from something. It was leading me toward something, toward the truth. I had been too afraid to confront. I forced myself to take another step, the sound of my footsteps growing louder. The hallway began to twist again, and this time I could see something up ahead. A door. Small, old-fashioned, almost like a childhood memory, rustic, wooden, and familiar. My heart raced as I approached. The whispers grew louder, now a chorus, of voices, my own, Rachel's, the creatures, each one overlapping, merging into one. I reached out for the door, my fingers trembling. "Open it, Jones," Rachel's voice called, clearer now. "You'll finally understand." I gripped the handle, took a deep breath, and pushed the door open. On the other side, I could see the road. It wasn't just any road. It was the road I had been on all along. The very same road that had led me here, out of the forest, and into this place. The road was empty now, dark and silent, the asphalt stretching far into the distance. But there was something different about it. I stepped through the door, my feet meeting the familiar asphalt. The wind picked up again. This time, colder than before, but it wasn't the same chilling wind I had felt in the forest. No, this was something else, something new. As I walked down the road, I realized that the only thing I could do now was move forward. I wasn't running from the past anymore. I wasn't trying to escape the guilt, the memories, or the darkness. I was walking toward it. Toward the truth. And I didn't know what that truth was, but I knew that it was the only thing left for me. The road seemed to stretch on forever, but with every step, I felt the weight lifting from my shoulders, if only slightly. I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't lost. For the first time, I felt like I was walking towards something real. The road stretched before me, darker now, the light from the doorway fading behind me as if the world itself was closing in. The silence was overwhelming, each step feeling heavier than the last. But I couldn't stop. Not now. The wind howled, through the trees in the distance, like a whisper of something ancient, something waiting for me. And yet there was no turning back. The path ahead seemed endless, but it was the only way forward. As I walked, the temperature began to drop. My breath came out in visible puffs, and my skin tingled with an unsettling coldness. I tried to push it away, to focus on the road ahead, but the cold grew more intense with every step. I hadn't realized how far I had walked until I saw it. The sign. It stood at the side of the road, leaning slightly, as if it had been there for years. I hadn't noticed it before. The words on the sign were simple, scratched into the wood like an afterthought. No turning back. The words seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. I could feel the weight of them in my chest, like a stone lodged in my heart. No turning back. The phrase echoed in my mind, rattling through my skull like the rattle of chains. I stopped in my tracks, staring at the sign, my mind struggling to process what it meant. There was a part of me that knew, a part of me that understood the truth, but didn't want to accept it. This was it. I wasn't just walking down a road anymore. I was walking toward the end. The wind picked up again, stronger this time, biting through my jacket and numbing my bones. I pulled my collar up and tried to push forward, but it felt like the road itself was resisting me, as if it didn't want me to continue. The whispering began again. At first, it was soft, faint, almost like it was coming from a distance. But with every step I took, it grew louder, closer. "You can't run from it, Jones." I recognized the voice immediately. It was her again, Rachel's voice, now distorted and hollow. But this time, it wasn't just a whisper. It was right behind me. I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest. But there was nothing there. Only the empty road, the endless stretch of darkness behind. Me. "You think you've been walking toward freedom?" The voice continued, its tone mocking. "There's no freedom here. Not for you. Not for any of us." The wind howled again, drowning out the voice for a moment, but I felt the coldness creeping into my bones. I stumbled forward, my feet dragging against the road. The truth hit me like a slap to the face. The road wasn't leading me out. It was leading me in. The guilt, the loss, the pain I had buried all these years, everything I had tried to outrun. It was all here, and it would never leave. I couldn't escape it. Not this time. I began to walk faster, my pace quickening as if I were trying to outrun the voice, the cold, the growing sense of dread. But it didn't matter. The road was alive. Every step I took seemed to draw me further into its grasp, pulling me deeper into its heart. "You've always known this was where you would end up," the voice taunted. "You just couldn't admit it." I stopped. The words hit me harder than anything. Before, I knew it. Deep down I had always known. The road was never meant to free me. It was meant to break me. The trees, the whispering wind, the cold. They weren't trying to hurt me. They were trying to wake me up. to make me realize that I had been running away from the truth for too long. The road stretched ahead, but now it felt like a weight on my chest. The endless asphalt was no longer a path to the unknown. It was a path to my own reckoning. I turned around and looked behind me, the sign still standing there. I wasn't sure what I expected to find, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. Waiting. I continued forward, my mind racing. The silence was oppressive now, almost unbearable. The air seemed to thicken, each breath feeling heavier than the last. And yet, the further I walked, the more the weight of the road seemed to lift. It was like a strange form of liberation. Each step felt like a small victory. I didn't know where the road led, but I knew one thing. I was not alone. The darkness around me had become familiar. The trees whispered, the wind howled, but it didn't scare me anymore. It was no longer about running. It was about facing it. The guilt, the loss, the fear. I reached the end of the road, though I didn't know how long it had taken to get there. The world around me had shifted, and there, standing in front of me, was a figure. Rachel. Her face was as I remembered it, beautiful, smiling, her eyes warm and full of love. But something in her eyes was different now. Something I hadn't noticed before. There was a knowing there, a calm acceptance that seemed to pierce through me. "You've come back," she said, her voice soft but firm. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. "I never left," she whispered, her eyes locking with mine. "You were never really alone, Jones." The weight of everything, the years of grief, the years of regret, finally crashed down on me. I wasn't alone. Not really. I had never been. The road, the hallway, the voices. It had all been a test. To make me face the truth. To make me confront everything I had buried. I took a step forward, and this time, I wasn't running. I wasn't trying to escape. I was walking toward her. I stood there, facing Rachel, the woman I had loved more than anything in the world. The air between us was thick, heavy with the weight of everything unsaid, everything buried. Her face, so familiar and yet so foreign now, smiled at me. But there was something in her eyes that made my heart ache in a way I hadn't felt in years. "You've come far," she said softly, her voice gentle, almost like the wind itself. "But this is the hardest part." I didn't know what to say. What could I possibly say? The road, the forest, the endless hallway. They had all led me here, to this moment. Why? I managed to choke out. My voice cracked, rough from the weight of my questions. Why all of this? Why the road, the darkness? What does it all mean? Rachel's smile softened, and she stepped forward, her steps light, as though the air itself was holding her up. She reached out, her fingers brushing against my cheek, and for a moment, I almost thought I could feel the warmth of her touch. "You know the answer already, Jones," she whispered. "You've always known. The road was never about getting somewhere. It was about getting to you. All this time you've been running away from yourself, from the truth." The words hit me like a slap, and I stumbled back, the weight of them crushing me in an instant. I felt the ground beneath my feet shift, the asphalt trembling as if it were alive, as if the road itself was judging me. I glanced down, and for the first time I noticed something. The cracks. Cracks ran across the pavement, jagged and sharp, splitting the road into pieces. The darkness seemed to rise from the cracks, tendrils of shadow that slithered toward me, reaching, grasping. It was as though the road was fighting against me, pulling me into its depths. "You've always been afraid, Jones," Rachel continued, her voice now more distant, like it was coming from another world. "Afraid to face the truth. Afraid to let go of the past." I shook my head, the coldness of her words sinking in. "No," I whispered, stepping back. I've let go. I've moved on." Her laugh was soft, but it cut through me like a blade. "Do you really believe that?" she asked, tilting her head. "You've been running, but you never faced what happened. You never faced me." The ground beneath me cracked open, and in the distance, I saw something dark rise from the shadows. A figure. Tall. Looming. It was the creature. It was the thing that had been haunting me all along. The thing that had been following me, whispering, tormenting me, waiting for me to understand. The creature's eyes glowed faintly, yellow and burning with an unnatural light. It grinned, its sharp teeth gleaming in the darkness. "You still don't get it, do you?" It growled, its voice guttural, like it had been trapped in the earth for centuries. "I am you. Everything you've tried to run from. Every sin. Every guilt. It's all me." The realization hit me like a freight train. The creature wasn't some external force, some monster lurking in the shadows. It was me. It was my guilt, my fear, my regret. "You've been running from yourself, Jones," the creature continued, its voice growing louder, more distorted. "You thought you could escape, but now you see the truth." I turned to Rachel, my eyes wide with disbelief. "No," I whispered. "No, this can't be true." But Rachel didn't speak. She just stood there, her eyes watching me with an unreadable expression. Slowly, she nodded, and that was all the confirmation I needed. Everything. The road, the forest, the hallway, the creature. It was all a manifestation of my own mind. A twisted reflection of the pain I had buried deep within me. A journey not to escape the past, but to confront it. "You're the one who has to face it," Rachel said softly, her voice carrying an almost sorrowful tone. "You're the one who has to let go." I stumbled backward, my mind spinning. It felt as though the ground itself was giving way beneath me, as though the world was crumbling, leaving nothing but the dark void of my own thoughts. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, everything stopped. The road stopped shaking. The creature froze in place, its fiery eyes dimming. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was still. The silence was deafening, but I finally understood what it meant. I had been running for so long, but the truth was never in the future. It had always been here. It was never about escaping the past. It was about confronting it. The road had led me to this moment, to this reckoning, and now there was only one thing left for me to do. I closed. My eyes took a deep breath and let go. I stood in the silence, my heart pounding in my chest as the world around me seemed to hold its breath. The road had become still, the dark forest at my back a looming presence, its twisted branches stretching like skeletal fingers into the night. The creature, my reflection, my guilt, my fear, stood before me, its glowing yellow eyes burning into me. The air between us was thick with an energy I could neither name nor escape. It was as if the world itself was watching, waiting for me to make my move. Rachel had vanished, but I could feel her presence, like a whisper on the edge of my consciousness. She wasn't gone. She never had been. The creature took a step forward, its long limbs creaking with every movement. "You know what you have to do," it said, its voice like gravel scraping across stone. "You've faced the truth. Now you must face the consequences." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. My hands were shaking. The weight of it all pressed down on me. The guilt, the loss, the endless regret. "You've spent your life running," the creature continued. "But now, you're here, and you can't run anymore." I wanted to fight it. I wanted to scream, to deny it, to tear this nightmare apart. But somewhere deep inside, I knew it was right. I had been running. I closed my eyes, squeezing them shut to shut out the creature, the road, the world. I couldn't escape anymore. The truth was here. It had always been here. I thought of Rachel, of her smile, of how she had looked at me, not with anger or blame, but with a kind of sadness, an understanding that I was too lost to see. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, and for the first time in years, I didn't try to wipe it away. "What am I supposed to do?" I whispered, my voice hoarse, cracking with emotion. "I've done everything wrong. I've made all the wrong choices. I'm not a hero. I'm just broken." The creature tilted its head, its grin widening. "That's the first truth you've said," it growled. "But the choice isn't about being a hero. It's about what you do next. Will you face the consequences of your past, or will you keep running from them? I wanted to scream, to shout that I couldn't do this, that I couldn't bear the weight of the truth. But something inside me shifted. A flicker of recognition. The creature wasn't my enemy. It was me. The part of me that I had buried. The part of me that knew I had to face the things I had run from. The part that needed to be freed. The road ahead was clear, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. It was never going to be easy. The guilt I carried, my mistakes, my regrets, were too heavy to let go of all at once. But it was the only way. The creature stepped closer, its eyes burning into mine. "You're not alone, Jones," it said, its voice soft now, almost comforting. "You never were. You just had to stop running." I took a deep breath and opened my eyes. The world around me seemed to shift, the darkness fading into a pale, sickly light. The road stretched out before me, not as a path to some far-off destination, but as a mirror. A reflection of my own choices, my own life. For the first time in years, I understood. The road wasn't meant to take me anywhere. It was meant to show me who I had become. And now, standing at the crossroads, I had a choice to make. I could turn back. I could run, like I had always done. But I knew that if I did, the road would always be there, waiting for me, pulling me back. The darkness would never let me go. The guilt would never fade, or I could face it. I could take responsibility for the pain, the mistakes, the loss. I could accept that I wasn't perfect, that I had hurt people, that I had hurt myself. But I didn't have to let that define me. I didn't have to be the person I had been. I could choose to be something else. I reached out, my hand trembling, but steady. I placed it on the road, the cracked, weathered surface cool beneath my fingers. The darkness seemed to recede as I pressed forward. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was running anymore. The creature was gone, dissolved into the shadows, no longer a part of me. The weight of the road lifted, leaving me standing in the clearing, the night air crisp and fresh. I wasn't free yet. Not fully, but I was no longer trapped. The journey wasn't over, but I was ready to continue, and for the first time, I didn't feel alone. The air felt different as I stepped away from the road, the heavy weight of the past finally beginning to lift, but the scar it left behind was deep. I wasn't sure what had just happened, if it was real or some twisted dream. The highway still stretched out in front of me, endless and unforgiving, but it didn't seem quite as daunting anymore. I was still standing there, staring at the pavement, when I heard the sound of tires. I turned instinctively, heart racing, expecting to see the headlights of a car barreling down on me just like before. But this time, it wasn't a nightmare. It was a real car. A light from the past that I wasn't sure I was ready to face. A rusted pickup truck slowed down as it approached. The driver rolled down the window, revealing a familiar face. Detective Daniels, my old partner. "Jones," he said, squinting at me through the dim light. "What the hell are you doing out here? You look like you've seen a ghost." For a moment, I couldn't find the words. His voice, so grounded in reality, pulled me back from the surreal world I had just left. I hadn't seen Daniels in months, not since my wife's funeral. Not since I had let everything slip through my fingers. I swallowed, blinking hard. I don't know. I'm trying to figure things out. Daniels raised an eyebrow. "Out here? At this hour?" I didn't answer right away. The world felt like it was still shifting beneath my feet, my mind trying to grasp onto something solid. "Get in," he said, his voice softened by concern. "I'll give you a ride. You look like you could use one." I hesitated. It felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. The world around me felt like it had been stretched and twisted out of shape. But something in me knew that I couldn't keep standing there forever. I had to take the first step, even if it wasn't perfect. Even if I didn't know what the next step would be. I opened the door and climbed into the passenger seat. The truck smelled like old coffee and cigarettes. A scent that was both comforting and foreign at the same time. I stared out the window as Daniel started the engine and pulled away from the road. "I thought you were done with this," Daniel said after a while, breaking the silence. You left the department, gave up everything. Why come back now? I didn't know how to answer him. I still didn't have the answers. But I knew that walking away from everything hadn't worked. I don't know, I muttered, my voice barely audible. I had to face something. Something I wasn't ready for. Daniels didn't press me. Instead, he just nodded, like he understood. He kept driving, the sound of the tires on the road a comforting hum in the background. We didn't speak much after that. I was still sorting through everything that had happened, trying to make sense of it all. But as we drove, I couldn't help but notice how the world was starting to change around me. The trees were no longer as menacing as they had been before. The darkness wasn't as heavy. The night felt a little less suffocating. The truck crept through the winding roads, and soon we were approaching the familiar edges of the town. I hadn't realized just how much I had missed it. The quiet, the stillness, the places that were part of my life before everything fell apart. Daniels pulled up in front of the small diner where I used to go for coffee in the mornings. It was closed now, but I could still see the dim glow of the neon sign. The place felt like a relic of a time I had left behind, a time when I hadn't been running. I sat there for a while, staring at the diner, the weight of my thoughts heavy. In my mind, I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know how to fix everything, but for the first time, I felt like I was moving forward, slowly but surely. "Jones," Daniel said, breaking my reverie. "You're not alone, okay? You've got people who care about you. Don't shut them out." I looked over at him, grateful for his concern. He had always been a good friend, even when I had pushed him away. I wanted to say something to explain everything, but I couldn't. "Not yet. Thanks," I said quietly. "I don't know if I can fix everything, but I'll try." Daniels gave me a small smile and patted me on the shoulder before getting out of the truck. I watched him walk toward his own car, then turned back to look at the diner one last time. The town was still there. The world was still there. I was still here. I didn't know where the road would lead me from here, but I knew that I couldn't keep running from myself anymore. I had to face the truth, to accept the past, and maybe, just maybe, start to rebuild. It was a long road ahead, but I wasn't alone on it anymore. And for the first time, I felt like I had a chance to move forward. The sun had barely begun to rise, its pale light breaking over the horizon in delicate streams, casting a soft glow over the town. The familiar sights of the small streets, the rusting storefronts, and the crooked streetlights didn't seem as oppressive now. For the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling like I was drowning in the weight of my past. I had slept the night through in my old apartment, a place I'd left untouched for far too long. The bed felt strangely comforting, like I had finally returned to a place that was once mine. It wasn't perfect, but nothing ever really is it? It was mine, just as much as I was mine now. I sat up in bed, the sunlight creeping through the curtains, and I couldn't help but think about Rachel, her face, her smile, everything I'd lost. The emptiness in my chest was still there, but it was different now. It wasn't consuming me anymore. It was a part of me, and I had to learn how to carry it without letting it break me. There was a knock at the door, pulling me from my thoughts. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart skipped a beat, and a strange tension crawled up my spine. But then the rational part of me kicked in. I stood up and made my way to the door. When I opened it, I found Daniel standing there, leaning casually against the doorframe. There was something about his presence that felt steady, like an anchor. In a storm, I had barely survived. "You look like you actually slept," Daniels remarked, a small grin on his face. "You didn't just pass out on the floor like last time." I couldn't help but chuckle, though it came out more like a dry rasp. "Yeah, I guess I did. First time in a while." Daniels glanced over my shoulder, noting the dimness inside the apartment. "You ready to face the world yet? It's not gonna get any easier sitting here." I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of his words. I wasn't sure I was ready to face the world, but I had to. Staying locked away wasn't the answer. "I don't know," I said, shrugging. "I feel like I'm still trying to figure it all out. But I've got to try, right? Daniels gave a reassuring nod. You've got to. You can't keep hiding from everything that happened, Jones. And I know it's not easy. But that's the thing about life. It's not gonna wait for you to be ready. I nodded slowly, the truth of his words sinking in. There was no magic moment, where everything would just fall into place. No perfect time to heal. It was a constant process, and I would have to fight for it every damn day. All right, I said finally, with more conviction than I expected. I'll try. I'm not sure what comes next, but I'm done running. I need to face it. Daniels smiled, that same easy grin that had always been there, even during the darkest moments. That's the spirit. The town's still here. People are still here. And you've still got a lot of work to do. But you're not alone, Jones. The words were simple, but they carried more weight than I realized. I wasn't alone. I didn't have to do this alone. And that made all the difference. Daniels clapped me on the shoulder before turning toward the hallway. Come on, I've got a favor to ask. You up for some breakfast? I raised an eyebrow. You're buying? Not if you keep looking at me like that, he replied with a laugh. But if you get dressed and get moving, we can figure something out. I couldn't help but smile as I grabbed my jacket and followed him out the door. As we stepped into the crisp morning air, the town seemed to hum with the quiet life I had once known. The streets were empty, but there was a sense of hope in the stillness. It wasn't the town that had changed, but me. I was the one who had to change. The world was still broken in ways I couldn't repair, but I didn't have to fix everything. All at once. All I could do was take it one step at a time, and that was enough for now. As we walked to the diner, I noticed a new lightness in my step. It wasn't a grand transformation. It wasn't some miraculous revelation. But it was something. Wasn't running anymore. I wasn't afraid of what the road ahead might hold. And for the first time, I wasn't alone. The diner was as it always was. A haven for the weary. The quiet hum of the coffee machine. The faint chatter of the few patrons scattered around. And the soft clink of silverware. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the warm, greasy aroma of bacon and eggs. It was a simple place, but for someone like me, it felt like the first real breath I had taken in months. I slid into one of the booths, the vinyl seat creaking under my weight. Daniels followed, slipping into the seat across from me with a casual ease that made everything feel almost normal. For the first time, I found comfort in the mundane, in the simple act of sitting in a diner and sharing a meal with someone who didn't expect me to be anything but myself. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with a weathered smile, came by and set 2 mugs of coffee on the table. "You two are up early," she remarked, her eyes twinkling. "Didn't expect to see you again after all this time." "Yeah, we've been keeping a low profile," Daniel said, a playful glint in his eye. "But we're here now. You still serving that heart attack on a plate special?" "Of course," she replied with a wink. "Same as always. You want the usual?" Daniels turned to me. "You want in on the special, Jones? Or are you feeling healthy today?" I stared at the menu for a moment, unsure. I hadn't really thought about food in days, hadn't been able to focus on much other than surviving. But today felt different. My stomach growled, reminding me of the simple things I had ignored for so long. "Yeah," I said, finally meeting his eyes. "I'll take the special." "Good choice." Daniels nodded approvingly, turning back to the waitress. "2 specials, please." She gave a short nod and wandered off toward the kitchen, leaving us alone in the soft buzz of the diner. The silence between us was comfortable, but it felt like there was something unsaid, like we were both waiting for the right moment to talk about things that had gone unsaid for too long. "You know, I never thought I'd see you back here," Daniels finally said, his voice quiet but steady. "Not after everything that happened. Not after you walked away from the department, from everything." I let out a long breath, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. I wasn't running from the job, Daniels. I was running from myself. I couldn't face the fact that I was alone, that I couldn't fix what I lost. Daniels didn't say anything at first, just watching me with an expression I couldn't read. But then he leaned forward, his voice low. "You're not alone anymore, Jones. You've got people who care about you. People who've got your back. I wanted to argue, to say that it wasn't that simple, that nothing could make what happened go away. But the truth hung heavy in the air between us. I had to admit it. I didn't want to be alone anymore. I didn't want to keep running. I was tired of hiding behind my grief, tired of pretending that I was okay when I wasn't. I don't know what to do next, I said, my voice cracking slightly. I don't know how to move forward. You start by making the choice to do it, Daniels said simply. One step at a time. You don't have to figure it all out today. Hell, you don't even have to have the answers right now. But you have to start somewhere. I nodded slowly. His words were simple, yet they cut through the fog in my mind. He was right, of course. I had been so focused on what I couldn't change that I'd forgotten to look at what I could. We sat in silence for a while, the rhythm of the diner's life around us soothing in its simplicity. When the food arrived, I dug into the plate in front of me without thinking, the greasy comfort of the eggs, bacon, and hash browns grounding me in a way I didn't expect. For a moment, the weight of the past lifted, if only just a little. It was like I could finally taste life again. So, Daniel said, breaking the silence. What now? You going back to the Force? I paused, chewing thoughtfully. The thought of it felt strange, but not impossible. I don't know, I admitted. I think I need to start somewhere else first. I'm not sure if I'm ready to go back to that life, but I might consider it when the time's right. Daniels gave a knowing smile. That's progress, Jones. I think you're closer than you think. I looked out the window, watching as the world passed by. People were walking on the sidewalks, some in a hurry, others moving at a slow, deliberate pace. The world kept turning, whether I was ready for it or not. And maybe that's how it was supposed to be, one step at a time. Thanks, Daniels, I said, the words coming out more sincerely than I'd intended. I don't think I could have made it this far without you. You don't have to thank me, he replied with a grin. We're still partners, right? Partners don't quit on each other. I smiled, the first real smile in weeks. Partners. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. Maybe I wasn't fixed. Maybe I never would be. But I had a second chance at life, at healing, and maybe, just maybe, at finding a new path. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like it was okay to hope again. The air had a chill to it that morning, the kind that made you pull your jacket tighter around your shoulders as you walked. The streets of town were still quiet, stark contrast to the chaos that had consumed my life not too long ago. But today, there was a new kind of peace. One that felt like it might actually last. I had spent the past few days sorting through the wreckage of my past, piece by piece. I'd contacted the department, made arrangements to meet with the chief. I didn't know if I'd go back to work as a cop, but I needed closure. The road ahead was still unclear, but that didn't stop me from taking the first steps toward something better. Daniels had stuck by me through it all, always there to offer a word of encouragement or a sarcastic remark when I needed it most. He wasn't the kind of guy who would pretend everything was okay. He knew better than anyone that the road to recovery wasn't a straight line. But he believed in me, and maybe that was enough. I stood outside my apartment, staring at the old cruiser parked in front. The car felt like a ghost, something from a life that no longer existed. It was strange to think that not too long ago, I had worn that badge with pride, and now it felt like a symbol of everything I'd lost. But I wasn't going to run from it anymore. I had to face it. I took a deep breath and opened the door to the cruiser, the familiar scent of leather and old coffee wafting up. The engine purred to life with a smooth hum, and for a moment, I felt a small sense of control again. The world had never made sense to me, but at least in the driver's seat I could pretend it did. The drive to the station was long and contemplative. I passed through the small town, the sights still familiar but now tinged with a new kind of distance. I wasn't just a cop anymore. I was someone trying to figure out who I was in this fractured world. But that was okay. It was okay to not have all the answers. When I pulled into the station's parking lot, I felt my heart start to race. It wasn't fear exactly. It was the weight of uncertainty. Would they take me back? Would they even want me back? The chief was waiting in his office when I arrived. He was older now, his hair graying and his face more lined with age and experience. But his eyes were still sharp, still carrying the weight of the department on his shoulders. "Jones," he said, nodding. As I stepped into his office, "It's been a long time." "Yeah," I replied, standing awkwardly near the door. "I guess I've been busy sorting things out." The chief looked at me for a long moment, as if deciding whether or not to speak his mind. Finally, he leaned back in his chair, his hands steepled in front of him. "Look," he said, his voice steady. "I'm not going to pretend that everything's the same. Things aren't the same. Not for you, not for any of us. But I need to ask, what do you want, Jones? Do you want to come back?" It wasn't an easy question to answer. There was a part of me that longed for the familiar rhythm of police work, the sense of purpose it gave me. But there was another part that wasn't sure I could go back to the way things were. Could I face the darkness again? Could I walk those streets knowing what I had left behind? "I'm not sure," I admitted. "I think I need to take it one day at a time. I don't want to make promises I can't keep." The chief nodded slowly. "I can respect that. Just know this, Jones, you're always welcome here. If you decide you want to come back, the door's open." The weight of his words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. It wasn't a decision I could make today, but it was a decision I could make eventually. I wasn't closing any doors. I was just figuring out if I was ready to walk through them. As I left the station, the sky had darkened, clouds rolling in from the west. It wasn't a storm, but there was something about the sky that felt like change. I wasn't sure if it was a good change or a bad one, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I climbed back into my cruiser and started driving. I didn't have a destination in mind, but I didn't need one. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally moving forward, even if the path was unclear. The road ahead was long, but I wasn't walking it alone anymore. There were still parts of me that needed to heal, still things that needed to be put back together. But I had made it this far, and that, in itself, was a victory. As I drove down the empty highway, I glanced at the rearview mirror. The past was there, behind me, quiet, distant, and no longer chasing me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was running anymore. The radio crackled to life as I drove through the fading streets, the sound of static briefly, cutting through the silence in the car. It was a strange feeling, driving without a clear destination. Normally, I would have had a plan, a reason for being out on the road. But today, I was just existing. It had been days since I'd talked to anyone from the old precinct. The chief had given me space, as if he knew I needed it. I had gotten used to the stillness of my apartment, the quiet that didn't feel comforting anymore. It felt suffocating. The hum of the engine filled the car as I drove through the outskirts of town. I wasn't sure where I was going, but something in me pulled toward the old cemetery. It had been years since I'd visited it. In the past, I always made sure to avoid it, to push the memories of what I had lost to the back of my mind. But today, I needed to go. I pulled into the gravel lot, the sound of the tires crunching beneath me almost surreal. The place hadn't changed, not really. The same old iron gate, the same worn stones, some toppled over with age, others standing tall but weathered. I got out of the car, my boots crunching the gravel as I made my way past the rows of headstones. The air was thick with the scent of earth and time, old, damp, and full of memories. I knew exactly where I was headed. I didn't even have to look at the name etched into the stone. I knew it by heart, even though the pain of it had never truly faded. Sarah Jones. My wife. The one I couldn't save. The one I failed. I stood in front of the stone, staring at it for a long while, feeling the cold wind against my face, feeling the weight of the past bearing down on me. The guilt was still there, sharp and relentless, gnawing at the edges of my mind. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "I'm so sorry I couldn't do more." The wind picked up, rustling the leaves on the trees around me. It almost felt like a response, like she was still here, watching me, waiting for me to find my way. But that was a foolish thought. I knew she was gone. I knew she would never be able to answer me, but I had to say it. I had to let it out. I sank to my knees in front of the grave, the tears I had been holding back finally breaking free. They were slow at first, reluctant, as if I had forgotten how to cry. But then they came faster, uncontrollable. The ache in my chest felt like it might swallow me whole. But somehow, it was a release. The memories of Sarah flooded back to me. The way she used to laugh when I made stupid jokes. The way she always knew what to say when I was lost in my own thoughts. We were supposed to grow old together, to face whatever life threw at us. But it had been taken from me in a way that I still couldn't understand. God, I don't know what to do anymore, I muttered, my voice breaking. I don't know how to fix this. How to move on. The wind howled around me, and for a moment, I thought I heard a faint voice in the distance, just out of reach. But it was only the rustling of the leaves, only the whispers of the past. I sat there for what felt like hours, lost in my own thoughts, letting the weight of everything settle around me. Eventually, the tears stopped. The emptiness didn't go away, but it felt different, less suffocating, somehow. I stood up slowly, brushing the dirt from my knees, taking one last look at the gravestone. I'll find my way, I said softly. I don't know how, but I will. I didn't expect an answer. I didn't expect the pain to go away. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was ready to take a step forward. I wasn't sure where it would lead, but I couldn't keep standing still, stuck in the past. The drive back to the apartment was quiet, but it was different now. The car didn't feel like a cage anymore. The road ahead felt less like an obstacle, and more like an opportunity. There were no guarantees, no promises that everything would be okay. But I was learning that I didn't need everything to be okay. I just needed to keep moving. When I pulled into the parking lot of my building, I didn't feel the same weight in my chest that I had when I left. The air still felt heavy, but it was a weight I could bear. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid to face it. The days blurred together in a haze of uncertainty. I had returned to my routine, if you could call it that. The city was quieter than usual, the streets almost deserted at times. Maybe it was the lingering sense of something unsaid in the air. People were still recovering, still grappling with their own demons. And I was no different. It was the night when everything seemed to change. I had spent the day mulling over my choices. What to do next, where to go from here. The department had left the door open, but I had no real sense of whether that was the life I wanted to go back to. It felt like a chapter I had closed, but couldn't quite put behind me. I sat in my small apartment, staring at the television, but not really watching it. The hum of the news anchor's voice was just background noise, my thoughts far from anything on the screen. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my stupor. It was Daniels. Daniels, we need to talk. I'm at the bar. Get over here. I stared at the message for a moment, my fingers hovering over the keyboard as I considered my options. I wasn't in the mood for company, but something about his tone, urgent, insistent, tugged at me. I grabbed my jacket and left the apartment, locking the door behind me. The city lights were dim as I walked down the street, the cool night air biting at my skin. The bar was a few blocks away, nestled between two rundown buildings. The neon sign flickered, barely visible in the night, but I knew exactly where it was. It was the same place I had always gone with Daniels when we needed to talk or unwind. Tonight, though, it felt like it wasn't going to be the usual kind of conversation. As I walked through the door, the familiar scent of stale beer and fried food hit me. It was the kind of place that had no pretense, no false glamour. Just old wood, dark corners, and the occasional sound of laughter or clinking glasses. Daniels was at the far end of the bar, nursing a drink, his face unreadable. I slid into the seat next to him, nodding to the bartender as he poured me a beer. Daniels didn't say anything right away. He just stared into his glass, lost in thought. "What's on your mind?" I asked, leaning in slightly. Daniels took a long sip before responding, his voice low. "You've been running from something, Jones," he said, his words hanging in the air. "I don't know what it is, but you're not going to outrun it. You need to face it." I clenched my jaw, looking down at my drink, the cold bottle comforting against my hand. The truth was, I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to go back to that place. The past was easier to carry in fragments, buried in the corners of my mind where I didn't have to deal with it every day. But I knew Daniels was right. I couldn't keep living like this. "Face what?" I muttered, my voice rough with frustration. "You think I haven't tried?" He didn't respond right away. Instead, he gave me a look that said he knew exactly what I was avoiding. I had been avoiding everything, the life I used to have, the job, the department, and worst of all, the past. But avoiding it wasn't going to make it disappear. "Look, you have a choice," Daniels said, his voice steady. "But you need to make it. You can stay here, wallow in it, pretend everything's fine, or you can confront the mess you've made of your life and do something about it." I looked at him, my heart pounding in my chest. His words were cutting through the haze that had settled over me for so long. The truth was, I was terrified. Terrified of facing what I had lost. Terrified of trying to rebuild something that felt too broken to fix. But Daniels was right. I couldn't keep hiding from it. "Do you think it's even possible to fix what's broken?" I asked quietly, my voice betraying a vulnerability I hadn't shown in a long time. Daniels took another drink, his eyes meeting mine for the first time that night. "I don't know," he admitted. "But you'll never know until you try. You can't keep running, Jones. The only way to move forward is to stop looking back." I felt the weight of his words sink in, the gravity of the decision that lay before me. I could keep running, keep pretending that I had some control over things. Or I could take a chance. I could go back to the department, confront the things I had left behind, and try to rebuild. But it meant facing everything I had lost. It meant accepting the person I had become, flaws and all. I finished my drink in one gulp, the alcohol burning as it slid down my throat. "I'll do it," I said finally, surprising even myself with the firmness in my voice. "I'll go back. I don't know what that means, but I have to at least try." Daniels nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "That's all anyone can ask." I stood up, throwing a few bills on the counter before turning to leave. As I stepped back into the cool night air, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't a sudden transformation, but a quiet resolve. I was done with avoiding the past. I was done with pretending it didn't matter. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least I was finally on it. For the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of hope, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. I wasn't sure where this road would lead, but I knew one thing for certain. I was ready to face whatever came next. The morning after my conversation with Daniels felt like a quiet storm waiting to happen. The city was still waking up, the streets lined with fog and the low hum of traffic just beginning to pick up. I hadn't slept much. The weight of my decision hung over me, pressing on my chest with a heaviness I hadn't anticipated. But there was no turning back now. The decision had been made. I grabbed my jacket and left the apartment, the crisp morning air doing little to shake the tension from my shoulders. My boots echoed on the pavement as I made my way toward the precinct. The familiar, sterile scent of old paper and coffee hit me as soon as I walked through the door. It had been too long since I had set foot in this place. Too long since I had allowed myself to be a part of something bigger than the mess I'd become. The precinct was just as I remembered it. Organized chaos. Officers and detectives, moving through the hallways, murmuring to each other, passing files and reports between desks. The atmosphere was thick with the routine, the endless cycle of crime and investigation. But today, it felt different. Today, it felt like I was an outsider, a stranger walking into a life I thought I had left behind. I found my way to the chief's office, my heart pounding with each step. The door was closed, but I didn't hesitate. I knocked twice before opening it, the sound of my fist against the wood louder than I intended. "Come in," the chief's voice called from behind the desk. I stepped inside, my nerves barely contained. The chief was sitting at his desk, flipping through a stack of reports. When he saw me, his face softened slightly, but there was no judgment in his eyes, only a kind of weariness, as if he had expected me to return eventually. "You made your decision then," he said quietly, setting the reports aside. "I thought you might. I'm back," I said, my voice steady despite the nervousness coiling in my gut. The chief nodded, leaning back in his chair, his fingers tapping the desk in a steady rhythm. "I'm glad you've come to this conclusion, Jones. I won't pretend I know what's been going on with you. Hell, I don't think anyone does. But I've seen you at your best, and I know you're not the type to back down when things get tough." I swallowed, my throat dry. "I'm not sure what I'm walking into," I admitted. "But I can't keep running. I've spent too long hiding from everything." He studied me for a moment, then gave a short nod. "Good. You'll need to stay focused. We've got a case coming up, something that might help you get back into the swing of things. We could use someone like you on this one." I raised an eyebrow, curious despite myself. "What's the case?" The chief hesitated, his eyes shifting for a moment as if he were deciding whether or not to share the details. "It's an old one that's never been solved. A case that keeps haunting this department. There's talk of some urban legend attached to it, but no one can make heads or tails of it. The details are sketchy, but it's worth looking into. If you're ready, I'll brief you on the specifics." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Urban legends. That was the last thing I wanted to hear. They always had a way of dragging people into the unknown, into places they weren't meant to go. But something about it stirred a sense of urgency in me. Something that I couldn't ignore. "I'm ready," I said, my voice steady despite the unease bubbling beneath the surface. The chief leaned forward, pulling a file from the stack on his desk and sliding it across to me. I picked it up, flipping it open as he began to speak. "This case dates back to when I first joined the department," he began, his voice taking on a somber tone. "It started with a few strange disappearances on the outskirts of town. Nothing too unusual at first. Missing persons, a few reports that seemed like runaways. But there was something off about it. People kept hearing rumors, stories of a figure that appeared out of nowhere. A ghost, some said. A killer, others. I looked, down at the file, seeing a series of newspaper clippings and old case reports. The pictures were grainy, the details unclear, but I could sense the unease in every page. It's always been dismissed as just another urban legend, the chief continued. But the thing is, people keep disappearing in that area, and there's no explanation for it. No signs of struggle, no evidence to point to anything other than, well, rumors. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Urban legends were just that, stories. But there was always a grain of truth, wasn't there? Something real that got twisted and distorted over time. And sometimes the legend was the only explanation we had left. I flipped through the file, my eyes scanning the details, looking for anything that made sense. But it was all jumbled. There were mentions of sightings, but no solid evidence. One thing stood out, though. There were names. People who had been last seen near a stretch of highway on the outskirts of town. An old, desolate road that locals avoided. And in each case, the people had vanished without a trace. "Sounds like the kind of thing that keeps you up at night," I muttered, feeling the weight of it all settle in my chest. "You think this has anything to do with the legend?" The chief didn't answer right away, his eyes focused on the file. "I think it's worth investigating. And I think you're the one to do it, Jones. You've got the skills. You know, how to dig into things that people want to leave alone." I looked at him, unsure whether to feel relieved or more frightened than ever. But something in me stirred. A sense of purpose, even in the face of the unknown. "All right," I said, taking a deep breath. "I'm in." The drive out to the outskirts of town felt like a journey into a forgotten place, an empty stretch of road that barely saw a car pass through. The morning had turned into late afternoon, and the sun hung low on the horizon, casting a sickly orange glow over the cracked pavement. I kept my eyes straight ahead, but my mind couldn't help but wander back to the file, to the people who had vanished along this road. I knew that I was about to face something that would test everything I had left. The chief had given me minimal information. The disappearances began 10 years ago, with the last known incident occurring about 5 years ago. Since then, the case had gone cold, and the department had written it off as a series of isolated incidents, a few missing persons reports swallowed up by the chaos of a busy city. But the rumors never died. Urban legends, ghost stories. People said there was something out there, something that wasn't human, something that appeared out of nowhere, a shadow that moved through the night, a thing that took what it wanted without a trace. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this, something darker, something that wasn't just a coincidence. The radio crackled to life, breaking the silence. "Jones," Daniels's voice came through, steady but distant. "You close?" I clicked the radio on, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. "Almost there. Just crossing the line into the desolate part of the highway. I'll let you know when I find something. Be careful out there. I know you've been through a lot, but you're walking into something weird. Don't let the stories get in your head. If you find anything, report back to me immediately. Got it?" "Got it." The radio went silent, and I stared out the windshield, watching as the buildings and streetlights faded away into nothingness. The trees lining the road looked like skeletal hands reaching toward the sky. This place felt wrong, empty in a way, that made my skin crawl. The road twisted, and just as the chief had said, it led to a forgotten part of the town. It was as if the world had abandoned this place. No more signs of life, no more cars, no more people. Just the desolate stretch of road and the trees that seemed to close in with every passing second. I pulled over by the side of the road, the tires crunching on the gravel. A sense of unease had settled deep in my bones, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. I grabbed the file from the passenger seat and flipped through it one more time. The first disappearance had been a woman, Sarah Montgomery, a local teacher. She'd been out for a late-night walk when she vanished without a trace. The second case was a man named Daniel Baker, who had gone missing after driving down this very highway. And the third was a couple, Matt and Claire Simmons, who'd been last seen driving back from a weekend getaway. Nothing. No sign of struggle, no ransom, nothing. Just empty cars and shattered lives. I stuffed the file back into the seat beside me and grabbed my flashlight. If there was something out here, I was going to find it. I stepped out of the car and into the cold air. The silence was deafening. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the smell of earth and decay. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I walked further down the road. The trees loomed overhead, their twisted branches blocking out the dying sunlight. The farther I walked, the more the air seemed to thicken, as if something was watching, waiting. And then, just as I thought I might be imagining it, I saw something. A shape in the distance. It was barely discernible, a shadow among shadows. My heart skipped a beat, but I forced myself to take another step. I wasn't going to turn back. Not this time. The figure moved. A silhouette of a person, standing motionless in the distance. It was tall, unnaturally still, its outline blending with the darkness surrounding it. My flashlight flickered, casting strange shadows across the road. I could feel my pulse quickening. Every instinct screamed for me to run, but my legs wouldn't budge. Something about the figure was wrong, too quiet, too unnatural. It didn't belong here. I stepped forward, my flashlight shaking in my hand. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to sound steady. The figure didn't respond, another step, then another. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. The fog had begun to roll in, creeping across the road like a living thing, wrapping around my ankles, pulling me closer. The figure remained motionless, its dark form now clearer. It had the shape of a man, but it didn't move like one. It didn't breathe like one. I stopped. Are you the one they've been talking about?" I asked, though I wasn't sure who I was asking. The figure didn't answer, but I could feel something. Something dark, something ancient, hanging in the air. The silence grew heavy, as if the entire world had frozen in time. And then, in a blink, it was gone. The figure simply disappeared, as if the night had swallowed it whole. 1 second, it was there. The next, it was nothing but an empty patch of road and thickening fog. My breath caught in my throat. My heart raced. The fear that I had pushed down earlier came rushing back, drowning me in panic. What the hell was that? I quickly turned, hurrying back to the car. But as I reached it, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The road behind me was empty. There was no trace of the figure, no sign it had ever been there, and yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I climbed into the car, slamming the door shut behind me, my hands shaking. I turned the key in the ignition, the engine roaring to life as I pulled out onto the road again, my foot pressing the gas a little too hard. What the hell had I just seen? I didn't know. But I was getting closer. I could feel it. And I wasn't going to stop now. No matter what I had to face, I wasn't going to turn back. The night seemed to stretch on forever as I sped down the highway, my eyes darting back and forth between the road and the rearview mirror. The air inside the car was thick with tension. My pulse was racing, and every nerve in my body was on high alert. I couldn't shake the image of the figure, how it had vanished without a trace. It was as if it had never been there, but I knew better than to believe that. The stories, the disappearances, they weren't just tales meant to scare people. There was something out here, something real. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to focus, but my mind kept drifting back to the strange encounter. What had I seen? Or more importantly, what had I seen? I had to find answers, and I knew exactly where I needed to go. I turned off the highway onto a smaller, less traveled road. The darkness deepened as I left the streetlights behind. The trees seemed to close in on me, their twisted branches like hands reaching out from the shadows. It felt like driving into the very heart of some forgotten nightmare. At the end of this road was an old house, abandoned, derelict. I'd seen it before, years ago, when I'd been working a case in this area. Back then, it had been a place of rumors, a place the locals spoke of in hushed tones. They said it was haunted, that something dark lingered there, but I had never given it much thought, until now. The house was the one common thread that linked every disappearance. Every single person who had gone missing had passed by here, or so the locals said. I pulled up to the edge of the property, my headlights casting long shadows across the overgrown lawn. The house loomed before me, its broken windows staring down, at me like hollow eyes. A sense of dread settled in my stomach, and for a brief moment, I considered turning back. But I couldn't. Not now. I parked the car and stepped out, the chill of the night air hitting my skin like a cold slap. The house was quiet. Too quiet. There were no sounds of animals, no rustling of leaves in the wind, just an eerie, suffocating silence. I walked toward the front door, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The door creaked as I pushed it open, the sound echoing through the empty house like a warning. Inside, the air was stale, filled with the scent of mildew and decay. I moved cautiously through the house, my footsteps muffled by the dust-covered floors. The walls were cracked and peeling, the remnants of wallpaper clinging desperately to the plaster. Everything about this place felt wrong, like it was stuck in time. And then, I saw it. A room at the end of the hallway, its door slightly ajar. My heart skipped a beat, and I knew, without a doubt, that this was where I needed to go. The room where it all started. I stepped forward, my hand reaching for the doorknob. The door swung, open with a soft groan, revealing the dimly lit space beyond. The room was empty, save for an old wooden chair in the center of the floor, facing the wall. The walls were covered in strange markings, symbols, scratched into the wood and plaster, like someone had tried to carve away their own nightmares. I stepped inside, my flashlight shining across the walls, and that's when I saw it. A photograph. It was pinned to the wall, a faded image of a woman with dark hair and wide eyes. I recognized her instantly. Sarah Montgomery, the first missing person. My breath caught in my throat. How was this here? I moved closer to the photo, my fingers trembling as I reached for it. The moment my fingers brushed against the photograph, a sharp pain shot through my chest. It was like someone had stabbed me with a jagged knife. I gasped, stumbling back, clutching my chest as the pain intensified. And then, the air around me shifted. The shadows seemed to grow darker, more alive. They twisted and writhed, reaching out toward me. The temperature in the room dropped, and I could see my breath in front of me, swirling in the cold air. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside. Panic surged through me as I slammed my hands against the door, trying to force it open. But it wouldn't budge. I turned back to the room, my heart pounding in my chest. The shadows were closing in. I could hear whispering, soft at first, like distant voices calling out to me. Then, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. The voices seemed to blend together, a cacophony of tortured souls crying out for help. And then, I saw it again. The figure. It stood in the doorway, its dark silhouette barely visible in the dim light. It didn't move, didn't blink. It just stood there, watching me. I froze, my body paralyzed by fear. The whispers became a chant, growing louder, more frantic, as if the very walls of the house were alive with energy. The figure took a step forward, and then another. The air grew heavier with each step it took toward me. The shadows swirled, the room closing in. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I was trapped. I backed up, my hand reaching for anything I could use as a weapon. But there was nothing. No escape. The figure stepped closer, its face still hidden in shadow. I could feel its presence like a cold weight pressing down on my chest. And then, in a voice that sent chills down my spine, it spoke. "You should have stayed away." The voice was cold, hollow, unnatural. It echoed in my mind, sending waves of terror through me. I was frozen in place, unable to move, unable to speak. The figure raised its hand, and the shadows seemed to grow longer, stretching toward me like hands reaching out of the darkness. I was running out of time. I had to get out. Now. I turned and threw myself against the door again, desperation fueling my actions. This time, it opened. I didn't look back as I sprinted down the hallway, the sounds of the whispers and the figure's footsteps echoing behind me. I burst through the front door, not stopping until I reached the car. My hands shook as I slammed. The door shut, the engine roaring to life. I didn't wait. I drove, faster than I ever had before, not daring to glance at the rearview mirror. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever I had just seen in that house was not of this world. The engine roared beneath me, my foot pressing down on the accelerator until the needle on the dashboard trembled just shy of the maximum speed. I didn't dare to look back, but the pull in my gut, the one that had been gnawing at me ever since I left the house, was relentless. It was as if something was following me, a shadow, unseen but present, trailing just behind my every move. My hands gripped the steering wheel with a white-knuckled intensity as the highway blurred in front of me, the headlights illuminating nothing but an endless stretch of darkness. I had to get away. I had to think. I had to process what I had seen, what I had heard. The house, the figure, Sarah Montgomery's photograph. The whispers still haunted me, their echoes curling around my mind like smoke, just out of reach but ever present. They wouldn't let me forget. The shadow, the cold voice, it was real. This wasn't just some urban legend. It wasn't just some twisted story told by locals to scare newcomers. No, it was something far worse, something ancient. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, frustration and fear building in my chest. But amidst the panic, something else was pushing its way to the surface, a need to know more, to understand. The figure had spoken to me. "You should have stayed away." Why? Why me? What was the significance of this house, these people, this cursed road? I needed answers. But deep down, I already knew what I had to do next. I had to go back. The thought hit me like a thunderclap. I should have turned away by now. I should have stopped the car and never looked back. But the truth, no matter how terrifying, was calling me. I pulled over at the first roadside diner I came across, its flickering neon sign casting a sickly red glow over the asphalt. The place looked deserted, save for one old man sitting at the counter, nursing a cup of coffee. He glanced up as I entered, his eyes tired and empty. The air smelled of stale grease and burnt coffee. I slid into a booth, trying to steady my breath, my mind racing. The old man didn't say anything as I sat there. He just kept staring at me, as though he could sense my unease. It wasn't long before a waitress, young and with a hollow look in her eyes, approached the counter. She didn't ask for my order. Instead, she just leaned against the booth, crossing her arms. "You're looking for answers, aren't you?" she asked, her voice quiet and deliberate. I stiffened, my heart skipping a beat. "Excuse me?" I said, my voice rough. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You've seen it, haven't you? The figure." I nodded, a chill creeping down my spine. "Everyone who comes through here eventually does," she continued, almost as if she had rehearsed these words 1,000 times. "They don't know what they're looking for until they find it, and then it's too late." I leaned forward, my voice shaking as I spoke. "What is it? Why does it keep coming after people?" She looked at me with pity, her gaze distant, as though she had seen too much in her life. "It's not the thing you should be worried about. It's the price you pay for knowing. Once you know, once you see it, you can't escape it. No one does." I could feel the weight of her words, but I couldn't stop myself. "What happened to Sarah Montgomery? And the others? What's the connection?" The waitress turned away for a moment, her eyes scanning the old man at the counter, as if checking if he was still listening. Then she sighed and leaned in closer. "They didn't just disappear, you know. They became part of it. Part of the shadow. The figure. It's not just a ghost. It's a curse tied to that house. Every person who goes missing, they're absorbed into the darkness. They become part of the legend. Their stories twisted and rewritten by the thing that haunts that place." I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. "How do you stop it?" She shook her head slowly, almost mournfully. "You can't stop it. No one can. The shadow is endless. It consumes everything. Everyone. It's the price you pay for seeking the truth. Once you find it, you can't unsee it. You can't outrun it." I was beginning to understand. The shadow, the figure, it wasn't just a manifestation of fear. It was the truth. The twisted, unrelenting truth that claimed anyone who tried to uncover it. But there was something else. Something deeper. I wasn't going to walk away. I couldn't. "I don't care about the price," I said, my voice steady despite the tremors running through my body. "I need to know what's happening." She studied me for a long moment, her eyes searching mine, as if she was weighing something heavy in the air between us. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. "The house is the key. But remember this, the truth will tear you apart." I stood up, feeling a strange calm settle over me. I reached for my wallet, but she stopped me with a hand on my arm. "Don't go back," she whispered. "It will take more from you than you know." I didn't reply. I walked out into the night, the chill of the air biting at my skin. My car was still parked in the lot, and the road stretched out in front of me, beckoning me back. I was already too far gone. I drove in silence, my thoughts consumed by the warning, the price of knowledge, the cost of understanding the truth. But it didn't matter. I had to go back. I could feel the weight of the decision in every inch of my body, pulling me back toward the house that had haunted my thoughts for so long. The shadow, the whispers, the warnings. They all seemed distant now, just noise in the background of the singular, overwhelming truth that had taken root in my mind. The road before me stretched on endlessly, each mile bringing me closer to something I wasn't sure I was prepared to face. Yet there was no turning back. I couldn't live with the question lingering any longer. I reached the old decaying house once more. Its silhouette loomed against the dark sky, the wind howling through the cracks in its wooden frame. The front door, slightly ajar, beckoned me. It was as if it had been waiting all this time, waiting for me to come back. As I stepped out of the car, my boots hitting the gravel with a soft crunch, a wave of nausea swept over me. But I pushed it down, forced myself to keep moving forward. The air was thick with an almost tangible presence, as though the very earth here was alive with something dark and hungry. I paused just outside the door, listening to the silence, The house seemed to breathe, its ancient walls exhaling and inhaling in rhythm with my own heartbeat. I could feel the pull of something unseen, urging me inside. There was no choice now. I crossed the threshold. The floorboards groaned under my weight, the scent of mildew and decay hanging heavy in the air. The faint moonlight that filtered through the broken windows cast eerie shadows that seemed to move on their own, twisting and stretching in unnatural ways. Every instinct in me screamed to turn back, but the need for answers was stronger. The shadow was here, somewhere. I could feel it, watching, waiting. Suddenly, a noise broke the silence. A soft whisper, too low to understand, but unmistakable. It came from somewhere deep within the house, from the very heart of the darkness. My breath hitched in my chest, and I strained my ears, listening for anything more. "You shouldn't have come back." The voice was low, chilling. It reverberated through my skull, gnawing at my mind. I didn't hesitate. I walked deeper into the house, my mind whirling with questions, my senses on high alert. I passed the living room, where the air was thick with memories, the remnants of lives long gone. There, at the end of the hallway, was the door. The one I had seen in my visions. The one Sarah Montgomery had been drawn to just before she disappeared. Reached out to touch the door, but before my hand could make contact, it swung open on its own, as if inviting me in. The room was cold, colder than anything I had ever felt, a chill that sank deep into my bones. I stepped inside, my flashlight casting weak beams against the walls, revealing cracked wallpaper and rotting furniture. In the center of the room, a figure stood. It was tall, its outline jagged and twisted, a silhouette of darkness that seemed to absorb the light. Its eyes, those dark, soulless eyes, locked onto mine. My heart stopped. It was the shadow, the thing I had been running from. I wanted to scream, to turn and run, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. I couldn't move, couldn't tear my eyes away from the figure before me. And then it spoke. "You've come too far, Jones," I gasped, my throat tightening. It knew my name. The figure took a step forward, its form flickering like a dying flame. "You were warned. You didn't listen." Wanted to speak, to demand answers, but my voice was trapped. The air felt suffocating, pressing in on me from all sides. "This is the price," it whispered, its voice echoing in my mind. "This is the price of knowing the truth." Suddenly the room shifted, the walls closing in, the air thickening, until it felt impossible to breathe. The shadows began to writhe, twisting and contorting into shapes I couldn't comprehend. I tried to move, to get away, but the darkness was too strong. It wrapped around me, pulling me deeper into its grip. The house, the figure, the curse. It was all real. I had become part of it now, whether I liked it or not. In my final moments, I understood. There was no escape, no running. Once you knew, once you saw, you became part of the legend. The price of knowledge was steep, and I had paid it in full.